meeting to order. It is 5:04. Welcome everyone and a very happy new year. I just had three quick announcements to make before we get started. One was highlighted by fellow board member Davina, is if you're viewing this in speaker view would probably be the best in order to see us. I know we're rather small on the screen, but that might help in order to have a better view of the board meeting proceedings. Second is, I know there were some questions about our board meeting in person, given the stay-at-home order currently in effect. And we just wanted to let everyone know that we as board members are considered essential workers. And for that reason, we are able to meet in person, and we are doing so with other boards throughout Marin. So we're not the only ones. And then the third one is related to about questions, and we'll get to this in the public comment, but just that we're going to follow like we've done in past meetings, where if there are any questions specifically on about the items on the agenda, they'll be taken after the superintendent and staff reports. I think that's it. So we can jump in. All right, let's do Pledge of Allegiance. Right there. All right, and you can face whatever flag is closest to you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Great, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Do we need to do consent now? Oh, sorry, we need to pull, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry, but I think we can wait to do that in consent. Yes. Anything else on the agenda though? I think everything else is staying as put.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Sorry.
so no worries. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. All right, review the norms. Does anyone want to read our governance team norms?
I'll do it.
Go, David, please.
Governance team norms. We agree to focus on the best interest of all students at every grade level, work together as a governance team to set direction for the district, come prepared and be fully present and engaged, do not interrupt, avoid side conversations, listen with empathy, be mindful of your assumptions, engage in dialogue before debate, commit to constructive conflict, exhibit positive body language, mannerisms, and tone of voice, maintain and protect impartiality and confidentiality, commit to no surprises, conduct all board business and board meetings, respect and support board decisions, speak with one voice regarding board decisions.
Great, thanks, David. And I just want to read we had a governance session last week, our board, and we came up with some new, what we're calling meeting norms. And what David just read were the governance team norms, and that applies to how we work as a governance team. And what I'm going to read now is our new meeting norms, and we're going to start reading these before all of our meetings. And this relates to the way our public interacts in board meetings. So the Kempfield School Board highly values community engagement and welcomes participation during our board meetings. If you choose to speak, we urge you to treat each other with empathy, kindness, grace, respect, and most importantly, to assume goodwill with each other. Finally, in the interest of allowing everyone who wishes to be heard the opportunity to do so, we ask that you adhere to the speaking time designations and speak only once on any given topic. All right, moving forward into focus on district goals. Raquel.
So our three key areas around finance, staff recruitment, training and support, and the achievement gap, opportunity gap will all be addressed tonight.
Great. All right, report from closed session. Sarah, is there anything to report from closed session?
There is nothing to report from closed session.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving into public comment. And again, this is for persons desiring to address the board on matters on the agenda at, this is the special board meeting one. So this is not on the board meeting calendar. The public may direct questions or comments related to school business to the board and superintendent concerning matters on the agenda only. Public comment on any matter within the district's subject matter jurisdiction shall only be permitted at a regularly scheduled board meeting. A person wishing to be heard by the board shall first be recognized by the president and shall then proceed to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public input depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? And you can do so by raising your hand.
And just to be clear, this is for things not on our agenda.
Exactly. I think this was
This is from a different meeting.
a typo. Yeah.
Raquel, are there any hands?
Any hands?
No hands raised, guys.
Great, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, moving into consent items. Is there a motion to approve consent items?
So moved.
Second.
David, discussion?
I'd like to address items 1A and 1B and item 3A on the consent agenda.
Great,
So before we approve, let me just
Yeah.
describe the changes. So for item 1A and 1B, those are both minutes from previous meetings, and we had a situation and we need to replace places where it lists Kwok Tran with Annie Sue, our new board member, and so we want to make that adjustment. And then for item 3A, that is our Williams quarterly report, and I just want to confirm that no complaints were filed with the school district during the quarter indicated above. So those are the
Great.
two changes.
great. All right, any other items that anyone would like to bring up for discussion? With those changes, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Okay, educational showcase. And it's this month is language arts with Julie Gallagher.
Great, so I see Julie here, so I'm going to promote her to a panelist to start us off.
And am I keeping tab for this?
Yes.
Okay, and it's slated for.
And I'm assuming Julie G is Julie Gallagher.
That is me. Hi.
Welcome, Julie.
It feels so strange to say hi when I know you can't see me. Hey, Raquel, would you mind locating Susie Lawrence and Jackson Calahoro?
Okay,
Jonathan, I've got 4 of them. You ready? Jonathan Para Castillo and Laura Hellemeyer.
okay, I'm going to promote them all to panelists as well. And they have permission to share their screens.
Oh, perfection. All right. Well, thanks you guys for the opportunity. The kids are so gracious in sharing their evening, their dinner time with us. And I just really want to start by saying thank you to the 4 of them. But also wanted just to start by giving kind of a state of the union, if I could, a state of the department. Just a kind of general overview for you all. And really just kind of give you a chance to look at what's happening. I'm not going to read it all to you, but just going across the grades, wanted just to kind of orient whoever's listening that, the department, without working too hard at it, we generally kind of stay in a similar pacing throughout the year across grade levels. So I just wanted you to have a moment to look at each grade level and just get a sense of what we're each doing at each grade level. I included extended reading on here, and it's not, a regular language arts classroom. It's one of our intervention classes. And I just wanted to make sure that we added some notes there in case you all had questions about the kind of work that's happening in extended reading, which is more ongoing. It's not so much about units of study in extended reading. It's just more ongoing support. So I'm going to move on and happy to come back to this if you guys want to come back and revisit it. Before we dive into just the academic spotlight of what's been going on and why my students are here, I just wanted to say a genuine, heartfelt thank you on behalf of our department, specifically to the board and Raquel and the business department. Patty has been amazing, was amazing in helping us get materials ordered before school started and curricular materials. And always thank you, to Barbara for all of her support along the way, but to the KSPTA for their generous grants and support, and to Grant and Wendy for all of the support, and specifically for getting us the instructional materials that we needed to kind of pivot into distance learning smoothly. So appreciate just how quickly it was all expedited. And without really any challenges. So just genuinely thank you. And the KSPTA grant that was given and granted was specifically aimed for the department for purchasing new books for our book clubs and for our classroom libraries, and even granted money to Rebecca Jellin to add more books to the school library. So all by way of saying, we're just so grateful to have you all helping to promote a culture that values literacy, and really getting books into the hands of all students just feels like more important than ever, to make sure that we're allowing so many opportunities to get books to kids. And it's fun if you ever are around and see the driveway out in front every morning. It's like a mini library out in front on any given day. People driving up, dropping off, and picking up. It's kind of fun to look at. And then I wanted to formally introduce my rock stars that are here tonight: Jackson and Laura, Susie and Jonathan. They were selected, and I hope they don't mind my saying I'm so proud today because we did our celebration in class today. Our unit ended, and I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, could have had anyone here. I just so appreciate the 4 of these kids for taking the time to prepare and to be brave enough to share their writing and their thinking with the crew. But they have good reason to, and they should be so proud of the work they've done. So they're going to talk a little bit more about the realistic fiction unit of study we just finished, where they were authors. And if Laura is available, I'm going to have her start. I think I need to stop sharing, Laura.
Hi.
Hi,
I
Ann.
can't share.
Okay, I'll stop. Let's see if you can do it.
Oh wait, I might be able to now. One sec.
Julie, just a heads up, Jonathan's not here yet, so I'm continuing to look for him, but I haven't found him yet, so.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
We had 2 teachers during this unit. Well, not exactly 2 teachers, but Miss Gallagher was using some video lessons from Sarah, a teacher in New York, because she had gone to a program in New York, like I guess about writing units, and she had really liked Sarah. So we were using some of her video lessons, and then we were also using some of Miss Gallagher's video lessons. And we had to start by getting inspiration. So what we did is we looked at the world around us, and we had to look at like the pictures on our walls and what was going on outside, what people were doing, were dogs barking, things like that. And then we would take that inspiration and write down ideas for stories. This is Miss Gallagher's ideas for stories. And yeah, pretty much. And then for session 2, we did kind of the same thing, but just in a bit of a different way. Instead of looking around us for inspiration, we instead asked ourselves, what stories do we wish existed in the world? We wanted to write stories that related to us. So we wrote down some of our traits, and then we wrote down ideas for stories that we could relate to that had to do with these traits. So these are Miss Gallagher's, and I think, yeah, these are mine. And yeah, that's kind of what we did. And then we just started writing different like drafts of our stories. So yeah.
Okay. Laura is being humble, and I wanted you guys to know that exercise was designed to start to decide who your main character was going to be, and starting, of course, with we're coming up with a character about your age, someone around your age. There were a couple of parameters. It needed to be realistic fiction. There was no fantasy that was going to happen, and that the character needed to be around your age and didn't have to be any specific gender, but couldn't be a dog. Or we've had dogs in the past, and those stories are not as easy to write as you would think. So we started with human stories. And I'm wondering, Jonathan's texting me saying he's there. I'm just wondering if did he join?
Yep,
Yes.
you're right.
Yes.
Hi, you're right on. Jonathan, you're cute. Hi, hon.
Hello.
You want to share your screen and show your thing?
Yeah.
Thanks, sweetheart. You made it.
Yeah. Okay, so what I did here, we were supposed to we were supposed to organize how we were gonna make our characters. So these were like a table, and what we did was external and internal thoughts about the character. So like the internal thoughts about my character, like what people think about him was that like he has no friends, he's by himself, he has no one to talk to, so he just talks to his brothers. He has no one to rely on. He feels like left out of like his family and like in the outside of the world. But the one thing that motivates him to like do good every day is his grades. And then something external, like what he thinks of himself. He thinks he's like a loner, like not popular. He feels ignored like every single day. So what he just does is focuses on school. So from right here, what I did is I put all that in the beginning, which I'll read to you right now. I was watching my little brother while on break. Wait, did I do my assignments? Oh no, what if I didn't do my homework for language arts? I'm running to my computer, palms sweating, my head pumping like if it were to explode. I check my assignments and nothing is attached. I fall onto my couch with a gasp, worried that I'm gonna fail. What am I gonna do as I continue to bite my nails and worry? As I'm already stressed out of my mind, I hear a scream, John! What? I scream back. Can you come help me? Oh my god, this kid is so annoying. Coming, I said to myself. Ugh, finally done with Jake's school. I exhaled a deep breath of relief.
Awesome. Don't leave me, Jonathan. Don't unshare for one sec. I just wanted to point out, even hearing Jonathan read, this is the first draft of his story, not his final, and where he started going from that table of internal and external traits. I just feel like it's worth mentioning that in sixth grade and in grades that lead up to that, these kids have had exposure to this notion that characters that we read about in books have internal and external traits. And so that when we were taking control and creating those characters, not only thinking about those internal and external traits, but also ways in which we could show them, reveal those traits. And I think Jonathan did such an outstanding job showing what's important to his character right out of the gates and just showing like the stress that he's feeling. Okay, darling, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stick around. You're not off the hook. Okay, and I just wanted to get back and just, oops, it always wants to jump. So I wanted just to make sure that you all saw a chance to see Jonathan's first draft, and then Jackson is here, and Jackson's like our radio speaker. Whenever he's on the broadcast in the morning, the Squawk Talk in the morning, I kind of like smile because he's going to be in radio, I'm quite sure. So enjoy this. He's going to talk a little bit more about the background, like the nuts and bolts of how the stories came together and what the day-to-day looked like. Jackson, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. So one of the main things that we studied during this part of our lessons was what makes a scene, dialogue, beginnings and endings, writing in 3D instead of 2D, and including details that reveal emotions. Now, what we did daily was basically we'd have a mini lesson from Miss Gallagher or Sarah. We'd have time to practice in our own breakout rooms, sometimes with our partners. And then after that, Miss Gallagher would confer with us and either ask if we had any questions or just show any examples that she would have had.
Awesome.
So now can you stop screen sharing?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I totally can. Sorry.
Okay, so what we did to develop our stories was look at story arcs. So there were a couple different story arcs that we looked at, such as Man in a Hole, where the story starts off pretty good, goes sort of bad, and then it comes back up. Maybe Boy Meets Girl, where it starts sort of meh, goes good, goes bad, and goes all the way back up to good. And what this did was sort of just give us a feeling for how our story was going to develop and how our scenes would feel when we wrote them out, so we could really get a feeling for how we were going to write and what we were going to write down. Then after that, we went into scene planning documents to sort of help us figure out what order the scenes were going to come in and sort of figure out what we were going to do with our stories. So we would put the scene title, we would put who was in it, we would put where it would take place, and then we would put a brief summary of what would happen inside of that scene so that we could get an idea of what we were going to write later on. We'd put about 5 scenes just so we could get a feeling for how our story arc was going to play into this sort of scene document. And then after that, I think we went to really start writing. So
You want to just wrap up? You unshare for a second? You can wrap up with that. Why we did the scene planning doc.
So a big reason that we did the scene planning doc was so that we could show how our characters were developed. For example, in my story, in the beginning, my character was sort of had bad work habits. He was kind of lazy, didn't really want to do much. And throughout the story, he developed as a character. And by the end, he had gotten better grades, better work habits, and a better mindset on what he could do with his time and sort of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackson.
Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of, if you can harken back to Jackson's scene planning doc, I just want to put in a small note that was a really important tool that I sort of developed on the fly in a panic because the kids were writing voraciously and it became quickly hard for me to wrap my head around who had a grasp around the beginning, middle, and end of a story and who was stuck in one part. And if the kids weren't asking for the help they needed, I quickly realized I needed to have them be accountable for at least the plan so that we had a reference point when I checked in with them in conferences. So that tool was absolutely invaluable and something I won't, even when we get out of this ridiculous pandemic, I'm definitely going to incorporate it in years in the future because it was a really important tool to be able to say, tell me about the part what scene are you working on? And or if kids had ventured off, because often when you're writing this kind of writing, kids have big ideas and they will venture off down a rabbit hole. And it was easy for me to say, how does that get you back to your scene? Is that part of your scene? Are you off track? And they were really able to use it to help themselves. I want to just, before I kind of pass the baton to Susie, I just wanted to just make a quick little explanation about the initial thing that Laura talked about and that Jonathan talked about in terms of coming up with story ideas. You would be amazed at the storylines that spanned my classes. We have everything from sports stories to family crises to kids being stuck at home in COVID. Susie's going to read the end of her story. It has to do with addiction. So there we go from smaller topics to like more intense and bigger, more maybe you would call them weightier topics. So I just wanted to share this with you and pass the baton to Susie to share some of her work.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. So when we were working on our endings, we were asked to write several endings to see how it might go. In my story, I wrote about a girl whose sister is suffering from substance abuse. And my first thought was to have the sister die in the end. I fiddled around with it a bit and landed on having the sister get the help she needed. So here's the ending I landed on. I was wondering if a board member would like to volunteer to read my story.
It's a little hard to read on the screen, Heather, I don't know.
If not, we have Laura in the wings, or I'm happy to read it too, Susie.
Okay.
Do we have Laura read it? She did such a good job today.
Yeah, sure.
You up for it, Laura?
Sure. Yeah, can you hear me?
Before you read that, I'm going to give props. I feel like I should explain too. The reason I invited Susie here is that when I was reading her drafts, after my lesson on endings, for example, I would pop in on Susie and she was literally writing her third ending. And she's not the kind of learner that says, maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that. She does it. So I just want to give her props that she would write all the way through her ideas and then was willing to go back and delete, which is also a really hard thing to do. Developmentally, it's hard to delete your writing and change your mind. So props to Susie. This is what she landed on.
Thank you. So Laura, just at the highlighted word. You can start there.
It was the next morning. I slowly pulled my blanket off of my legs and threw on my slippers. I sat on the end of my bed trying to get my bearings. I thought back on last night. For a moment, it felt like a fever dream, but as I twisted my doorknob, I was hit with reality. I looked down the dreary hallway to see a pile of bags at Ella's door, filled to the brim with her belongings. All of a sudden, my mom's door opened. I saw her standing there, bags under her eyes. It's rare to see you up this early on a Saturday, she smiled. I giggled. What are these bags for? I asked. After last night, Ella and I decided it would be best if she went away for a while. I turned and looked at the bags, stuffed with a new beginning. I looked back at my mom slowly. Rehab, I said with a quiet morning voice. She needs this, Annika. My mom's eyes slowly filled with tears. I know, it's just, how do I explain this feeling to her? It feels as if the person you thought you knew best was really drowning inside themselves, reaching for help. I was always the one closest, but never the one to extend an arm back. I'm too disappointed in myself to say it out loud. It's okay, I know this is hard on all of us, but this is what has to happen. I nodded and walked away. My mom and Ella were about to leave as I stopped Ella in the hall. She looked at me with deep eyes and said, I'm so sorry. That was it, all I needed. She knew what she had done, and now she's going to help herself. She started to turn away. Ella, wait, do you need some help with your bags? Sure, she said, smiling. As I reached down to grab the last bag, I felt a sense of relief. She's going to be okay, I said to myself with a deep breath. I looked back up and started walking down the hall. On my way to the car, I grabbed a granola bar for me and Ella. This is the last one. I tossed the bag in the trunk. Annika, Grandma will be here soon, so don't answer the door or make food. You always know how to reach me. I know, Mom, rolling my eyes. Hey, Ella, she turned swiftly. I thought you might want a bar for the road. Oh, yeah, thanks. I gave her one last hug. I could hear her unwrapping the bar behind my back and taking a bite. I smiled, now feeling like she was accepting my help. By taking a bite of the granola bar, it was as if she were saying, I'll be okay, and so will you. I slowly let go and saw her big smile. I laughed, and she giggled back. As I watched the car drive away, I felt a weight being lifted off of me. Relieved, I went inside and headed up the stairs. I went into Ella's empty room, gliding my fingers along the lilac wallpaper. I walked to her desk to see her old photo album sitting out. I sat down and started looking through the old memories, dust collecting on my fingertips as I turned the page. I got to the final page to find a note taped to the last picture. It was a picture of me and Ella sitting at our tea party table. I was pouring her an invisible cup of tea. My eyes began to water. The note read, Dear Annika, I left this here for you so you could always remember one of our best tea parties. I giggled. I have been having a hard time lately with finding myself. What I did was wrong, especially because I burdened you with my struggles. I know you are having a hard time too. The only advice I can really give you is to keep your chin up and always ask for help, even if you're scared. That's where I went wrong. I didn't get the help I needed, but then you saved me. Truly, I could not be more grateful for you. I sit here now thinking about the right way to help you the same way you helped me. All I can say is, it's your turn. It's your turn to be selfish. You will never be able to help yourself until you let go of helping me. I'm okay. I'm getting help. Now you need to be recognized. Not by mom or me or even the people at school. You have to recognize yourself. You are amazing and I'll love you forever and ever. See you soon, Ella. Tears were rushing down my face and onto the laminated pages of the album. The days I would dream of have finally come. I finally know that I'll be okay, and even if I'm not, it's okay to not be okay. So I sit here looking back at all the rough times and remember I can get through anything. With that, I say thank you to Ella for showing me how to love myself and showing me how to say I will be okay.
Awesome. Thanks for reading, Laura, and thanks for sharing, Susie. The very last thing I wanted to show you all is just what we did today is our celebration, and just kind of hoping that I could just leave you with the visual. Not a whole lot that needs to be said here. It'll load slowly. Today I asked students just to go to their final drafts and copy and paste their favorite part or part that they felt most proud of and just post it. And then we took literally 25 minutes of silence just to read each other's and to comment. So I just wanted to let you know that they're color coded. I'm happy to share the link with you so you can look at it on your own. It's really most impressive. And as I said to the kids, I hope it doesn't freak you out when I say this, but I want to just say I'm like as proud as I am as if like I just had a baby. Like I just feel so, genuinely so proud of how hard they worked and what they created, especially in this medium. I'm just really, really deeply impressed with their hard work. So I just wanted to leave you with that and see if you had any questions for my panelists before we say goodbye? I know we're just about to 20 minutes, if not there. So
Wow.
turning over the mic to you all.
Fellow board members, any questions, comments?
I would like
Yes, please.
not a board member. So, Mrs. Gallagher and students, I just want to acknowledge the way you guys presented. I really appreciated seeing the process. So, and each having a part in that, and then to have Laura read at the end, I thought was pretty cool. So, thank you guys for really making it visible for us what's happening in your classroom. So, we too, just as you were so very impressed, I was completely taken aback. So, thank you for this. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
I had a comment about the, that I just wanted to, it begs the question, well, Julie, you always knock it out of the park with these presentations, and this one delivered, as well. And especially given, when you mentioned the word medium, I have to jump on that. And I'd love to just ask the students, Laura, Jonathan, Jackson, and Susie, what has been, I mean, it can just be like a sentence or you can choose not to say anything. Just describe what, you know, like, I mean, as I'm looking at this, it's amazing to see how intimate and how, how you're able to go through the process, even via Zoom and at home, through the majority of this. Can you describe what seems different this year versus last year in language arts on how the writing process has gone?
I can make a comment on that. I think that really one of the big things that we focused on was detail. I think going from 2D writing to 3D writing was a big thing. And then I also think that we made a step up in plotting our stories and just adding more detail to the plotting process, so we'd have more of an idea what we were doing before we got into the actual writing.
Yeah, now that shows felt structures. Thanks.
Susie, Laura, or Jonathan, do you want to add to that response?
Well, like last year, it was kind of all about like leads and endings, and that's kind of all we focused on. And then the middle, what we focused on was like dialogue. But I feel like this year, kind of like what Jackson said, we focused on our individual scenes more, like what makes a scene and how to make this like each individual scene more interesting.
Yeah, that shows.
Just kind of putting their two comments together. Last year, I really remember focusing on doing beginning, middle, and end, and just making sure you made that full story. But with this year, we kind of focused more of painting the picture for people and focusing on how to express the emotion of our characters through our writing.
Yeah. Thank
Jonathan,
you.
I don't want to talk over you. I want to give you a chance to say no thanks, or do you want to add on?
I think they kind of covered everything. So
Okay, thanks, hon. I just want to add, Heather, in response to your question, the beautiful thing about teaching 7th grade is that this is the unit I get to teach after they've done personal narrative for a couple of years, and really it follows on the heels of an author study. So what the kids didn't recognize or acknowledge, I think, because they're humble, is that they're readers, and that when you read, this kind of writing is easier to produce. It's not to say it flowed from anybody's fingers, but that connection, I think, really clicked for the kids. And that was sort of our ending takeaway today was, gosh, keep up the reading. And as you read moving forward, keep doing this kind of writing, especially if it was easy for you or enjoyable for you, because it doesn't come up every year, this kind of storytelling.
Yeah, no, it was so impressive. It was so enjoyable, as Raquel said. And yes, please send us that link. We'd love to see that too.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
That was great. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Jackson, Susie, Laura, Jonathan. You rock. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well done, well done. All right, moving into employee organization report. KTA,
Okay, give me a second because I need to.
do some transitions.
Yeah, let me just. So.
Yes. And just as a reminder, before we speak, I know there was an email sent out about this. Given that our board meetings have been going quite late, we are trying to be much more cognizant about our timestamps in the agenda. And we did designate 10 minutes for each update. So from KTA 10 minutes and then from classified 10 minutes. And that goes as well for KIC and for KSPTA, who are following right after.
And I'll be keeping time.
Yes.
So I have Susan and Brad's hand up. So do you want to go, Susie, you want to go first and then I can call on Brad?
I do. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of KTA, I'd like to wish all of you a happy new year. We look forward to continued communication and transparency in this new year. And now I would like to turn over the remainder of our time to our bargaining chair, Brad Widelock, with a negotiations update. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Okay, Brad, you can talk.
Thank you, Susan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. First item on our agenda is, of course, our tentative agreement, and I have gotten the vote this afternoon, and I can share with you that we have agreed to ratify the tentative agreement, and I will be happy to, on behalf of the association, put my name to it tomorrow morning when I am at school, and so I can do that and send it along to Raquel for your signature. So I think that is certainly a positive step. I think we can all agree to that. And I think it's a positive step towards repairing our relationship, which is something that I think we should expect to work on in the coming months as we progress. And that is my update from bargaining. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can. Otherwise, call it a day.
Great. Thank you, Susan and Brad. And I think it's, I know you can't see our faces from that far, but know that there are nice smiles underneath all of these masks. Wonderful news about the TA. And I do want to echo that we share the commitment to working on a positive relationship with the district and KTA and the board. So know that we are just as committed. And thank you for mentioning that tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, classified. I think Gretchen is likely have her hand up.
Yes. And let's see. There she is. Go ahead, Gretchen.
Welcome, Gretchen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again. With the classified staff is always appreciative of having a moment to share what's happening in our little world. I want to start with a quote that I found that is echoed a lot lately. Big things have small beginnings. And with the crazy world we're living in right now, we keep focusing on the big picture and how we want to get to that final point. And I really think it's time to focus on all of our small successes, especially what happens in distance learning and hybrid learning. I find that we are given this amazing opportunity to open up small successes for all of our young learners. The paraprofessionals very often are the ones who are put into a breakout room to help children to reinforce a lesson or to present a concept in a new way. And we're lucky that we have that opportunity in, I don't want to say the privacy of a breakout room, but the nice thing about the breakout rooms is it's tailored to what the student needs or a small group of students. We're fortunate because the students have the ability to show us they're comfortable in that situation and they're not worried about the pressure of modeling the exact same thing the rest of the class is doing. It gives them their very fantastic chance to shine and show mastery of a new concept. I'd like to share one example really quickly with how this works. A second grade paraprofessional was put into a group with kids who typically have a harder time with math. She told them that the teacher said they only had to do math one way, not two ways. The children rejoiced and they got right to work. One child who has a particularly hard time with math said he loved math today. He didn't know why, but he loved it today. And it showed because he was engaged and he was able to find the right answers. Another child exclaimed that this was the best math day she'd ever had. It was amazing because it was a simple lesson that the children had been working on, and some of the children had struggled, but in the small group, they were able to get it and ask their questions and have their questions answered right away. And they fed off of each other's excitement and championed each other's small successes. And that is what gives the paraprofessional who's working with them the best feeling. That is heaven for a paraprofessional. And we are so fortunate that we have these Zoom breakout rooms to do it in. It's not something that we've had a lot of experience feeling when we are in the classroom, because again, there are other students around, and sometimes it is harder to target that quick instruction and that reinforcement. Most of our paraprofessionals are people who have had careers and jobs in different areas, and we're able to pull our experiences and learning at different ways to teach and reinforce and share examples. So again, the paraprofessionals, as far as this portion of the classified staff, are so happy to have the opportunity to work with the children in small groups and give them the confidence that a small success happens. And each of these small successes will build to larger successes. And when we get to the end of the year and look at the big picture, hopefully we look at all of the small successes along the way and celebrate all of them. And that's all we have to say tonight. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity to speak and to work with the children in small groups and give them all of their opportunities for small success.
Great, thank you, Gretchen, for that update. It's really insightful, and we are very grateful to you and to all the paraprofessionals for offering that support right now. Is there any questions for classified? Okay.
I was just gonna say, thank you, Gretchen, for highlighting some of the advantages that we've learned and some of the lessons we've learned during this difficult time. And I know that our expert educators of all stripes are gonna be able to take those lessons into whatever the next phase holds. So thank you for pointing that out.
Certainly.
Great, all right. Thanks to both KTA and Classified. We are now going to move into updates from KIC and from KSPTA.
Okay, there's Kira.
Great, welcome, Kira.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
All set? You guys can hear me. Okay. Hi. First of all, that educational showcase was great. Nice work, all students and Julie Gallagher. Really good. I wanted to make sure everyone knows about our new Basich Families kickoff that we're doing next Tuesday, January 19th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. We got to thinking about how Basich kindergarten and first grade students and really every new family doesn't know a normal day at the Basich campus, and it just kind of breaks our hearts. So we wanted to give a sort of a day in the life of a Basich student and involve our enrichment teachers, as well as give parents a chance to ask questions. So those who are listening, please register via our website, kickschools.org, under events and community. Again, a sobering update for our community. We have raised so far this year a net amount of $570,000, which is behind last year, which was already a down year. First, I want to thank all of our donors who have faith in the KIC mission of fundraising so that all of our students have as many learning opportunities as possible, and give, knowing that we have to think of the long game and support our children and schools in this moment. We acknowledge the 238 donors to date and all those committed to giving in the spring. We are so grateful to you all and appreciate your support during this crazy year. As you know, I have warned of a worst case scenario for KIC during past Board of Trustee meetings. Well, unfortunately, we find ourselves in a position where we can tell the district that at this point, they can only pencil in $500,000 as a guide from KIC for the next school year. This is unfortunate, and my hope is that we can increase this number when parents hear this and more donations come in. I am hopeful. We on the KIC board are doing the best we can given the circumstances. I hope that parents get the message that withholding donations now is going to directly impact our schools next year. At this point, the district will be planning to build $500,000 less into the budget for the 2021-2022 school year. We can imagine that means deeper budget cuts and wider program cuts that directly affect our kids. So for any donors who haven't yet given, who are listening out there, please consider your school foundation. This is unprecedented, and let's not let this pandemic get the better of us. Your children are counting on you. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about why giving now is more important than ever, feel free to check out Investing in Kids at kickschools.org or reach out to me and Dirk at foundation@kickschools.org. Please help us reach our common goal to support our students. Consider giving to Kick today. You can go to kickschools.org and hit the big orange Donate Now button on the homepage in the upper right-hand corner. Thank you for your consideration, your support, and generosity. And that is what I have to say. If you all have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Kira, first, I just want to say thank you for all the work that you and the Kick board are doing. It's a very difficult year, obviously, for fundraising and other things. I'm wondering about the number that you just gave us. It is, of course, sobering. It's not unexpected, but it's substantial in terms of the cuts it would represent. We're going to have to be going into budget planning very soon, and I'm just wondering whether there's a chance by the February board meeting that you might be able to update that number, or if you think this is the number to pencil in until the end of the school year or the fall. I'm just wondering sort of when, if that projection changes, when you might be able to tell us.
So my hope is that by the end of the month, the projection will change. So we are going to keep you guys directly updated, even week by week. And we have some ideas about how to, fundraise and try to get our donors going by the end of the month and even into the beginning of February. So yes, it is not, like I said, it's a guide right now as of today, looking at the way things are going, how we're doing at this point. So my great hope is that we can definitely increase that number. So I will be directly in touch.
Great. And thank you to you and the board and all the families who have given. It's a huge part of our school budget, so thank you.
Any other questions for Kira? Thank you, Kira. As you said, very sobering update. And again, thanks to I can't emphasize enough how many different creative ways that you've been fundraising this year. The emails that have come through, it's really a testament to your leadership, you and Dirk, I should say, and the board's leadership to continue to try to come up with these creative solutions. So thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to thank my entire board for, we're all in this together and working hard. Look forward to some other creative ways in February.
Great. Great. All right. Thanks, Kira.
Thank you, Kira.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, next up is Erica.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So thank you, Kara, for that update. I really encourage everyone to support KIC. It is so crucial to our community and to our kids. I just have a handful of updates. The first is I'm very excited to introduce our first ever KSPTA Kids Closet. We are going to be collecting new or extremely gently used clothes for kids. And we then will be hosting a no-cost shop where parents in the district, Amber Hatfield is going to help us to provide opportunities for parents to come in with their kids and shop safely at social distancing protocols and privately. So Amber and I believe Maya is also volunteering to be there so that it's not parent volunteers seeing, we don't want parents or kids to feel self-conscious at all. So this is we're going to be having collections. Everything is going to take place outside the Base Edge Community Center. And so we're going to have collections on Tuesday, January 19th through Friday, January 22nd from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and Wednesday, January 20th from 3 to 5 as well. And so we're communicating that out to everyone, but I just wanted to say it here in this forum. And then the shop itself will take place on January 30th. And as I said, we're going to be doing that through Amber Hatfield, helping parents to make appointments to come in. we're asking families to, look through if they have new and very gently used clothing that's in really, excellent condition. And all those details are going out through Parent Square and will be on our website and such places. But we're really excited to introduce this new sort of form of support for some of the people in our community who could really use some help right now. And the goal is to outfit kids in our district who need it with clothes they're going to be proud to wear and that they're going to feel really good about. So again, to parents and community members listening, we are really excited about this and appreciate your support in advance. The next thing I just wanted to update is that the Buddy system is still up and running and going strong. Christy Chandler has been working to help. Adrienne Brown has been hosting a homework club. We have a tutoring program up and running. So I just wanted to sort of celebrate all that work that is going on in terms of offering, again, our families some extra support. We hosted 2 parent and family education events in December. We are still refining the best way to offer either interpretation or translation services. The professional interpreter services, they are currently requiring a team of 2 interpreters and a minimum of 2 hours. So it would have cost us over $600 to engage their services. So we've been trying some creative alternatives. Baruch Goldwasser was a hero and tried valiantly to keep up with our speaker while doing translation, and that was way too hard for a non-professional team. And so for the second parent education event, we tried a closed captioning and translation service. And so if anyone has any feedback, if anyone's gotten any feedback on that, I've visited the DLAC and ELAC meetings, as I always do, to solicit feedback on how that second option went. But we're committed to making sure that all of our families can access those parent education events. So we will continue to work to refine that. Our second budget allocations were approved at our December 7th meeting. And so that is exciting. That included things like what Julie was talking about with books and things like that. We still have around $9,000 in that sort of basket of funds that we've set aside for district needs and programs that we can support. And so now with the conclusion of the KIC KSPTA grant funding meetings, that final meeting took place this week. And I want to really appreciate KIC because those funds, PTA is helping with the process of the grant program because we've done it in the past, but those funds are all KIC funds that from that fund of need. So thank you to the parents who supported that last spring, and thank you to KIC for allowing us to be part of the process. But so we will be communicating out to Grant and to Marianne and to Raquel about the fact that we still have this small bucket of money. And so if there are needs that teachers are identifying and staff are identifying, we would love to get those requests and consider them for a final allocation of funds. And then my last update is just that we are working, Raina Sobel, who is our VP for BASIC, and I are working closely with Marianne to try to figure out how best to recruit and deploy parent volunteers on Zoom for some of the BASIC teachers with the simultaneous instruction. So trying to figure out the best way to get parents to support that if parent volunteers who are willing and able. And part of that will be just offering a fingerprinting opportunity for those parents, because if parents are going to be alone in a breakout room with kids, they will need to have been fingerprinted beforehand. So we're working with Marianne, and as we get further sort of refinement on the exact role and such, we are hopeful that we can get that up and running as soon as possible. And that's it from my end, but if anyone has any questions or thoughts, I'm always open.
Great. Any questions for Erica? All right. Thank you, Erica, for the great update. And it's so nice to see the continued close alignment with KSPTA and KIC. think it's to everyone's advantage. So thank you for that collaboration.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great. For the record, we are actually ahead on the agenda schedule.
Don't jinx us.
I'm not going to jinx us. But we are now moving into reports from superintendent and staff to the board. And I just wanted to remind our public who may not have heard the announcement in the beginning that we are going to do this how we've done the last few meetings in terms of if there are questions or comments or feedback that anyone would like to make about the various updates that are going to be taking place from superintendent and staff. Please plan to do them after the end of the updates, which is going to be after L1B, the school site updates by Grant and Mary Ann. So just if you could hold your questions and comments until after that, we will do as we've done before, where you can raise hands and have up to 2 minutes to offer any feedback or comments. All right, well, thanks, Raquel. It's passed to you.
Okay, great. So there are some staff that I may be calling, Paul Miller, Kirsten, Grant, and Marianne. You can just raise your hand so that it's ready so I can enable you to talk more quickly, so if needed. So first off, just some general updates. I'm excited to introduce Sid Morale. She is our new assistant to the superintendent and the board that joined us on January 4th. And so some may be aware that Marie Moulton officially retired at the end of December, and she's been kind enough to work with Sid and onboard her. But Sid's here in the room with us doing the minutes, and really excited to have her. So thank you, Sid, for all that you've done thus far.
Yes.
Welcome.
And welcome. Yes.
Next, I just wanted to acknowledge the events on January 6th that took place at our nation's capital and highlight the work that our staff did across both of our schools and really allowing the opportunity on site for our children to just engage in discourse about what took place across the grade levels. So there were activities happening in kindergarten classrooms, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade classrooms. And it's just really a testament to our staff's commitment to really trying to build the critical thinking skills of our students, allowing them a voice to speak about what they're seeing and engage in that discussion, and really the leadership from our site administrators as well. So I just want to call that out a little bit. You may have noticed in the principal newsletters, they both address the situation as well. So thank you to the staff, thank you to our students, and thank you to our parents too for allowing those opportunities to take place. I think it's important to name it. I also want to share, we did submit a mini grant to the CDE for $20,000, hopefully give us some funds to support professional development, interventions potentially, and so we'll learn the status of that grant at the end of this month. Heather and I had a chance to meet with the College of Marin last week to talk about the acquisition of the bank up here on College Avenue. So as some that may have attended the board meeting last month heard a presentation from Beth Rhodes, and there were some questions, and so Wendy Holmes will be representing the district with Paul Miller later this week at the Safe Routes meeting with COM, and so just wanting people to know that we're continuing to engage in that dialogue. You'll notice on the consent agenda, our facilities use agreement was updated, and that was because we want to be sure that we're able to start renting out our facilities to get some revenue. And so we already started this January with Ross Rec. So they're doing some activities outside. And then we are in conversations with Galileo about summer camps. And so just trying to think about ways that we can continue to generate some revenue for our community, for our schools. And last, I want to give a plug for the strategic plan and the LCAP planning advisory group. So that was highlighted in our newsletter last week. And if there's a date, if you're interested, there's a solicitation form that needs to be submitted by January 15th. But just hoping to have people come together so we can calibrate those two plans as we begin doing our 3-year LCAP and making our strategic plan more visible to our community as we go into the next year.
And you might want to just describe what LCAP is, just in
Yes,
case.
thank you. Sorry. LCAP is an acronym for the Local Control Accountability Plan. So this really helps guide what are the actions and services that we're offering our students, and how does that align with our budget as well. So thank you for that. So those are just some general updates. Next on my list, you'll see the Kentfield School District contract negotiation openers. So we've identified Article 8, procedures for evaluation, Article 10, hours of employment, and Article 23. As openers for this negotiation session. You may note that KTA highlighted their openers at our last session, so in our December meeting. So we will begin those contract negotiations shortly. Second, talking about the bond project update. And so our update is that, we've completed the base roof, patching and gutter work, the rekeying that happened this summer, the paint job as well for both of our sites. We are still in the process of the camera project. We've budgeted for it, but are in the process of that. And then you're going to hear in a moment some information related to the play structure, the basic play structure. Our balance right now is 2.6 million, which is a bit higher than what we had anticipated at the end of last fiscal year, which is good for us. And we have our next Citizens Oversight Committee on January 27th. So just wanted people to have that update about the bond projects. So next, I'm going to go to deferred maintenance. So I wanted to show this slide. I shared it prior, maybe it was the November meeting, so people have seen it before. And what you'll notice is on the left-hand side, it speaks to the projects, completed and planned projects that were listed there, and the actuals and encumbrances to date. It's about 1.8 million. The items that are bolded are the items that are still being planned for, have not done yet, and our balance to spend is at 2.6. The idea is that we would spend that or encumber it by May of 2021, which is the spring. To the right-hand side are a bullet point of other items that were on our deferred maintenance list that we would potentially look into. And then at the very bottom were some recommendations from staff. So you'll notice that what's highlighted here is when I brought this to the board last, I was given the direction, we really have prioritized HVAC AC system. And so that's really where we want to focus our energy. And we had varying quotes. So up in the right-hand corner, it was that we were projecting 2.17 million. Down in the lower, we got a quote more like 1.5. So those are big differences, right? So what Paul has been working on very diligently is working with various vendors to figure out how can we move forward with getting a true estimate as we move forward. So Paul, I'm going to call on you to share an update about that process. You're on, Mr. Miller.
He's muted.
There he goes.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Paul. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Where we are with this whole project with the HVAC is I've had to bring in an architect, a mechanical engineer to kind of look at the cost, get some design proposals together. We have got some costs from the mechanical, but we have still working with the architect on design and coordination. Until we get those numbers in or those figures in and get the people involved, we still don't have an exact cost of this project, but we're hoping to get something very soon. They all have information on how to move forward with this project. And I have told them that this hopefully will be a summer project, so hopefully they'll put it on a front burner.
So our hope is that at the next board meeting, we'd be able to have some more information related to what we can anticipate the cost to be. We're not there yet, but I wanted you all to know the process that we're in and that we're moving forward. And that's where we're really focusing our energy right now. Any questions for Paul or myself about that piece?
Okay, the Kent bathrooms, how that's on the staff recommendations, that was on our additional projects, right, for consideration? It should be up there as well, or no?
Yeah, so the issue, and Paul, you might be able to chime in about this, but that was taken off the list because of the projected cost that came out, I understand, last spring.
Right.
And it's still something that's been recommended, and you'll notice that it says Grant Grover budget next to it.
Yeah.
And so there was discussion because the cost was so much higher, is the wondering about utilizing Grant Grover funds for that. So I don't know, Paul, do you want to chime in about that one?
Yeah, we have put it on hold for right now until we look at all the rest of the costs. And to confirm kind of where we are with the AC, what I've understood is that the AC is a priority, bathrooms would be a second.
Yeah.
And any funds that would, I won't say spill over, but it will say spill over in a sense, to if we just choose to move down that road, because there could be a potential escalation of cost. We did have a bid last year of $500,000 to do the bathrooms, and we're finding out that we are not seeing a lower cost with this COVID. We're actually seeing it still continue seeing escalation of costs for all construction.
Right. Okay, so that one hasn't fallen off is the bottom line.
No.
That's good, okay.
Yeah. It was just what was listed, additional projects for consideration on the deferred maintenance list.
Yeah.
Those ones right there in that box were the ones that seemed that they would be doable with were the higher priorities at the time. So, and as you
Right.
shared before, that list is fairly old list.
Yeah,
But then staff recommendation, when we looked at everything, we brought those ones down there under that staff recommendation list for the ones that we would recommend to focus on. And that's where the bathrooms are.
got it, okay. So it's next meeting that we'll take another look at this once we have more firm, okay. That makes sense.
I just want to just add that depending on where the HVAC AC comes in, and we're getting to a basic
Yeah.
play structure line item later, those two things could wipe out the money
Yeah.
we have. So
Right, no, that's
just to
fair.
point that out.
Agreed.
Okay, so Paul, I'm gonna keep you there as we, when, for the basic play structure item.
Yeah, it is nice.
Okay, so just to note, this is part of the presentation, so I'm giving context right now, there is an action item later, and I'll be bringing these slides back up again to revisit, but just to give the presentation piece of it. So just for background, it was, I believe, spring of 2019 when funds were raised through KIC to support the purchase of a new play structure at the Basage school site. And so after the funds were raised, they raised $96,500. A committee came together to talk about what it could look like and such. And so some preliminary work began last fall, and then COVID hit and things stopped. And so there wasn't additional work that happened in the springtime. And so this fall, what we wanted to pick up the conversation again to figure out, what were our next steps. The money had been raised by our community, and so we needed to know now what do we need to do to move forward. There's a cost specifically of the structure, and then there's the cost of the infrastructure, right? i.e. the ground and all the things that we have to do to prepare for the space. So in September, we brought forward a request to the board to give us some form of budget, because without a budget, our vendors wouldn't give us quotes. We couldn't get to a real amount. So we identified an amount at that time, and we came up with $250,000. That was inclusive of the $96,500 that was coming from KIC, and that we would utilize bond funds for that expense, right? And just a reminder, bond funds are specifically for improvements. There's language in our bond that specifically speaks to construction for play structures and refurbishing, etc. Those are restricted dollars. We can't use them for program, for staffing, anything like that. And as I mentioned before, it does have a time to it, right? So May of 2021. So once we got that approved budget, we began the work to map out the space, talk with the contractors, all the different specialists that we needed to. And I say we, and it was really Paul Miller to, call it like it is. And so, and that's where, this has taken time, and our vendors have offered us some proposals, and the costs have come in higher than we anticipated, right? And so we need to now revisit our budget. You may recall at the December meeting, there was an item we pulled, and the reason we pulled it was specifically about the basic play structure, because we didn't have the cost quotes yet. So we now have more information, and so we want to come forward about, what does that look like? That's our current status, so the December-January timeframe. So this next slide speaks to information that we received. So you'll see, one, we have a basic stakeholder group that Marianne has put together at the site that will be ready to come together to look at the vendor options once we know what we're going to do with the budget. The proposal we received, there's really three key areas. One is the ramp in the field and what that cost will be. The port in place is that rubber that's below the structure that we need to have, and that cost came in significantly higher than we anticipated. And then there's the structure piece, right? So those are the three key points of the projected cost. So Paul, I'm going to call on you now if you want to speak a little bit about those kind of areas and some of the things that we weren't anticipating that came forward.
Okay. Well, when I've been dealing with the three vendors that we've chosen to look at this project, one of the things that was very clear with is that we were trying to stay with a $100,000 playground budget, And one of the costs that we did not know is what we were going to get from an engineering design. And going through this process, I've learned that it costs more now to demo it than I had anticipated. First of all, in the original budget, that poured in place underneath is costing us probably probably almost $50,000 to dump, because it has to go to a special dump because of what it is. So that's why the numbers are coming in. That's one of the reasons why the numbers are coming in. Design came in with more detail than I had anticipated, more meaning that it came in with some drainage that I was not anticipating. We were anticipating the ramps. We were anticipating, a lot of the curbs that are there, but we did not anticipate quite a bit of drainage that goes underneath that whole structure. So right now, the whole thing has come in, and I will tell you again, we were figuring that there might be a little bit of a downturn in the economy because of COVID. It did not happen. All contractors are telling me that there still has not been any decrease in any bidding costs. If something it's actually increased just because of the bidding climate. So some factors that were kind of unforeseen at this point.
So in terms of what we feel like we need, so one, we know that there's an interest from our community, interest from staff. Feel like it's a good thing to have for our children, especially as we get to come back. So I feel like it's something that's really good for us. It aligns with our bond language. The bond language specifically says construct, reconstruct, and rehabilitate playgrounds and play fields in accordance with federal, state mandated safety regulations. So we're all in compliance there. Our balance, if you recall, in the fall, is we learned that our balance in the bond budget was higher than we anticipated. So we also have additional dollars there. The expense won't be taken away from AC HVAC, this increase that we're looking at. And the one other piece beyond the kit bathrooms and beyond the HVAC AC, the interest that the board has expressed that's been advised to me prior was the solar panels, right, in the roof. Yeah. And so that's something that, we talked about, the cost of that would be close to 4.7 million, that we don't even have a balance right now that we would be able to cover the current bond funds. Right. So, utilizing all of that rationale, staff is recommending that we would move forward with increasing the budget and utilizing our bond funds for that. So the way we've calculated, you'll see up there, is we took the estimated cost. It's small for you all to see, but the estimated cost of $185,000 for the ramp field prep, poured in place, that rubber area estimated 75, and the structure 100,000. So that gives you a total project budget of about 360. And then, for every project, we should really have a contingency budget. Just it's typical practice, and so looking at a 10% contingency budget, not with a plan to spend it, but just to have it. So it's a total budget of 396. So that's higher than what we had. We had a $250,000 budget, insignificant. So it's an increase from 250, with a total of 146,000 more than our original budget. So right now is really just for you all to kind of ask questions about that. The action item about this will be, in a subsequent item, but those are the details. Questions?
So one question I had was, in terms of funding, up there, it's the bond fund and the Grant Grover, but we would use just the bond fund.
So we're recommending the bond fund specifically because the Grant Grover dollars are more discretionary. So there's more flexibility, and the Grant Grover dollars don't expire, right? So we can hold those in advance for a longer period of time.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So I just want to throw this out there. Is there an actual need to replace this play structure? In other words, from a safety standpoint or otherwise, is this something that needs to be done, as opposed to something the community might want? And I understand KIC raised the funds, but just as a pragmatic question, does it need to be replaced?
So it's my understanding it's been 20 plus years since it's been replaced. The area that I think is really important for us to take note of is that by upgrading it, we would then make it ADA accessible, that we don't have right now. So it's really important. We have to do that if we demolish and we put something new in. We don't have to if we don't mess with it. But we know right now that it's not, ADA accessible there. So, and I don't know, Paul, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the one thing I hope you guys understand, even if you look at the play structure that it has 3 or 4 more years left, let's just say that, will you have the funds to, you already know what the cost is going to be at this point. Will you have funds to do what we need to do to make this area accessible for everybody? I want to say it might be a good opportunity to take advantage of what we know we have to do, is make it accessible. Might be a good opportunity to do this now, as we've got KIC funds to help support it, and we can make it accessible for all students.
I have a question. So if we weren't going to move forward on making this project happen, and what would be the alternative? Because the KIC side of the money has been raised, so I guess I'm unclear, like what would happen with that money that people donated with the intent to have for the play structure.
The money would go back to KIC, and they would make the determination of how they would want to either give it back to their donors or how that worked through that process.
I'll just comment on that quickly, Davina. It was specifically raised for that one purpose, so
Right.
it can't really be repurposed. It would probably have to be returned.
Okay.
I guess one question I have that, Sarah, you brought this up when we were looking at the previous slide on deferred maintenance about the potentially we would not be able to do the Kent bathrooms if we do this. My sense is though that the Kent bathrooms were going to come from Grant Grover, which are unaffected by this. We wouldn't be able to dip into bond funds for the bathrooms, is what you're suggesting. Because I still think there would be sufficient funds, for example, to do the Kent bathrooms, AC, and the basic play structure coming out of the bond funds. I could be wrong.
In theory, I think that that's true. My concern is just that we are running right now on such a negative, skinny budget. And I mean, if what KIC is projecting for next year is true, this is not getting better. We're barely at our minimum reserves from an operating cash flow. And once we spend the bond money and the Grant Grover money, if we have a leak, if we need a new roof, if we have a major repair, we have no money for it. Like, so my view is the Grant Grover money, we should not touch. Like, that should be at least a large part of it should be our rainy day fund that, if something happens on campus and we need $100,000 or $150,000 because we don't have it in our budget and we're not going to have reserves that are going to be able to cover it. So theoretically, we could do the bathrooms out of the Grant Grover. I will tell you, I will personally vote against spending down all of the Grant Grover money. I personally think that's irresponsible, but I mean, we could get to that.
I get it. So, but I just wanted to make sure that we see the difference is this would only be coming out of the bond funds.
Right, but it's $300,000.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we approved 150, so increasing it by 146 is now the district putting in $300,000. If the AC is 2.1 or 2, and we've got, 2.5 or 2.6 to spend, there's not enough money to do the Kent bathrooms with the bond money. So then we either don't do them or we dip significantly into Grant Grover. I just think the fiscal environment we're in, we need to be, I mean, we don't have an option, our school facilities have to be functional and operational. And so we're I worry about spending and we're gonna run out of money, is my concern.
Understood. No, definitely.
It's not that I don't want us to have a new play structure for the KIC donors to get what they intended, for it to be accessible to all students. These are all wonderful things, but it's a $300,000 item out of our district budget. That's a huge amount of money.
Out of the bond money. So
Out of the bond
it is a
money.
slightly different.
Out of the
I mean, it
bond
doesn't
money, yes,
solve
but it's
other
out of our
operational
deferred
questions.
maintenance budget. Of
Sure.
all the things we could spend $300,000 on, it's just the sticker shock is, I think, what I'm struggling with.
Sure.
It's not the merits of the project in any way.
I get it. No, I get it. That's.
But if we have to return the money, and we also have just sort of the community, goodwill of what was raised, and if we're hearing that this may, 3 years from now, we might get to that point, we're not going to have the community money 3 years from now. I don't think that we can hold on to this money any longer. And it's already, people who donated wanted to see their kids enjoy it. So I do feel like we're in a time frame that is also bound by kind of the intent too of people wanting to see their money come to fruition. Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, we're not voting right at this moment. We will be voting later in the meeting. But I suggest if there aren't any other questions on this specifically that we move forward.
Yeah, there, I have two, just one hand went down, so we're not gonna take.
Yeah, we'll do the questions
Okay.
after.
Okay, so, moving on. So the next part of the update is around the COVID update. So I, again, have some slides up here. So some of these people have seen, I've given some updates where we are right now. So first and foremost, I think this is related to state and local update and guidance. So we know that Marin continues to be in tier 1, the purple widespread tier. What was shared is that we have a 15.2 adjusted case rate. So that's 80 to 100 new cases per day. So it's the highest it's ever been. It is, in hearing from our public health officers, is due to what happened over the holidays for people, so the mixing that was going on. The state and local shelter at home order was extended. We thought that would be ended last week, and obviously it was extended. It's extended indefinitely, and so we'll continue to monitor that. It does not impact us as a district right now related to schools. We can continue to operate in person, and so that's obviously what got to resume this past week and having kids back on our campuses. On the 30th of December, our governor announced the California Safe School Plan for All, which really had these 4 key pillars around funding for safe openings, safety and mitigation measures, oversight and assistance, and transparency and accountability. And so just to note, that plan that he outlined here in Marin County overall, not just our district, we're in a really good spot. The 30-point plan that the Marin County Public Health officers put together with the Marin County Office of Education that we've all been following was modeled after through the state's plan. So we feel really, really good about that. But it's just, it's not the same thing across the state. So that's exciting for us. And then some may be aware that the proposed budget was released last week from our governor, and we'll be participating in some forums in the next couple of weeks. So at the February board meeting, we'll be able to give more updates related to that. I thought this slide was quite interesting that was presented from our public health. You see here the 58 counties across our state and where people are. And although I know it's very small, but the second from the top is Marin County and where we are related to the case rate. So it's not, and Dr. Willis says, he doesn't want this to make people take down their guard, but just to acknowledge we are overall doing well in our county. Yet it's still not a positive situation. So, but we're second in the state. Above us is Humboldt County. We haven't seen this slide yet. Here in Marin County, these 2 slides continue to be watched by our community, especially because they are related to schools specifically. So the one on the left-hand side is managed by the Office of Emergency Services, and it shows case rates that are happening within our school settings. And so you'll see for a long time, this slide had a lot of zeros on it, and the numbers are going up, right? So now we have 7 cases of suspected transmission happening in school sites, 77 positive student cases, and 29 staff. The feedback also from public health continues to be, it's more of the adult to adult, adult to student, right? So it's not really the student to student. So, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen, right? So it's just very important for us to be aware. And then the right-hand side is what the Marin County Office of Education, their data that they're managing as well. So just, it's important to keep track of these numbers as they happen. For us, just for you all to know, we have not had yet a test positive on site, any transmission on site. We have had scenario 2 letters, which deal with close contacts that we've sent out. At BASIG, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters that have gone out thus far since we've been operating with in person. 0 at Kent today. So this here is kind of the highlights from our local and state public health. And so I will start with the gathering and mixing socially. It is not permitted, right? It's very, very clear in our public health orders. It's almost the first thing that you would read when you look at those orders. We continue to, in our messaging, trying to just take people back to the source documents, because as a district, we're trying to not interpret the information, but just say, here is what it says, please read it, and we're trusting that people will follow this guide. The travel guidance, non-essential travel beyond the 120 miles is highly discouraged. And it's allowable with no gathering or mixing. So it's not saying that it's not prohibited, you cannot do it. And so the key is you can't do it in mix. So, and just an example would be, somebody said, I talked with a colleague today, is if you are getting in an airplane and flying, during that flight, you're mixing, right? So if you did, even if you're going to a home that's your self-contained home, you mix during that flight. So it's really important that that we're following these guidelines. COVID testing right now, we have 7 days a week available. You might have heard Curative. It's in our county, available in our county. Curative is the one that the county is utilizing beyond some other locals that are available. And there has been some reports from FDA questioning their results. And there's additional, and I can add it to the minutes from this board meeting, but some additional information saying that, that the results coming from Curative are valid and that we can trust it and it continues to be approved. It is not the lab we as a district have been using. We've been using PMH Agile. And so just for people to have that. And this is my favorite news to get to share today. So you'll see at the very top, I have the hands together with the heart. This was a picture on a slide deck that was shared by a staff member that I keep going back to because to me it's showing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And so the vaccination distribution. So I'm happy to share that our school nurses last weekend got the vaccination, which is super exciting. And it just goes to show how much closer it is to our other school staff. And so right now, we as districts are preparing for phase 1B, tier 1. That's where school employees sit. We sit there with childcare providers, with food and nutrition, I believe is another one, and people that are 75 and older. And so we have been asked to create staff rosters to show all staff that are on payroll, as well as staff that might be itinerant that we contract but come onto our sites to provide services. So something you might have heard called a non-public agency that we would contract for speech and language services, for example. They would be somebody that would be prioritized, but they may not be on our roster per se because they're not on our payroll. So we are asked to get those rosters ready, and that public health will prioritize based on supply and demand. And so all of the people that fit in this tier 1 will be the first ones to get it. We may have to do some sub-prioritization in there, but we need to be ready when the time is right. So whenever that might be. Right now, they are preparing large locations across our county. I believe Tam High School is being looked at to get prepped to administer the vaccination, Terra Linda High School as well. And I shared with the teacher today, they said to me, well, what if we get called at like 10 o'clock? And, and I said, well, guess what? I'll be in a classroom and teach, right? Like then it's all hands on deck. Like we need to get people there, get in, get that vaccination because they'll skip over us, right? If we're not ready when they say, here it is, we need to be able to go. So really having ourselves as ready as possible so that that we can move forward. And what I was told just this morning, as early as this weekend, right? As late as next month, right? So we just have to be at the ready. So it's very exciting. So take us back to the picture of the hands together with the heart and the light. There's light. And so kind of to that end, and I want to acknowledge Brad and Susan's words about the calibration that's happening and the collaboration with our Kentfield Teachers Association and the tentative agreement. I'm excited to hear that passed. I did not have a chance to check in with them prior to this evening. But we do obviously have now a tentative agreement. We'll move forward with signatures that we all worked collectively on. And just to remind people, we have a memorandum of understanding. The purpose of that was really to have a joint MOU that was dealing with impacts and effects due to the COVID situation. Focus was on safety for all, state requirements with Senate Bill 98, and being flexible with the changing environment of COVID. So we jointly recognize there's changes in our state and local public health, the restrictive nature of our MOU that we adopted in August, and the impact that it was happening on teaching and learning. So for those reasons, we knew we needed to really make some adjustments. So our tentative agreement, just some highlights. We focused on in-person instruction. And so we are in agreement that we are in full hybrid right now. Cohorts of up to 12, up to 13, if agreeable by the classroom teacher, where kids can come back onto campus. You may be aware that there were grievances filed as well as unfair labor due to some questioning about our phasing and our timelines, and those will be removed because we've set up a situation where we'll continue to have a perimeter, but not to the way in which we're not able to have those cohorts in the size that we need for kids to get as much as possible. So that's exciting. Timeline, we have agreed that we'll stay in hybrid and not expand beyond hybrid, which would be full in person, if we are in the purple tier, right? We wouldn't do any further expansion until we're in the red tier for 2 weeks, right? So that's common, that's what's been, recommended by public health, so continuing to work on that. And then the third piece is that we've agreed to bring together a collaborative work group that's going to focus on the adjustments to hybrid, because we've received feedback about, just some areas in which we can improve. And so our staff, I actually already had at least one person reach out to me to say, hey, I'm interested in the work group, right? That has it's very clear about what it is that work group will be doing, i.e. schedules for these types of programs, what they're going to look like, what's the timeline that we'll be implementing. So just very, very outcome oriented. And they'll also be working on a plan for a full in-person and transition to full in-person. And when I say full in-person, just for people to know, that means every student every day, right? So we would still align with instructional hours through Senate Bill 98, but we would have students coming 5 days a week. So that's our goal. We've been very clear, we being the district have been very clear with KTA, that's an interest of ours. I believe it's an interest of theirs. It's just a matter of us getting to do it collaboratively. So it's exciting, and I go back to that picture of the light and the hands together. So, thanks. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our principals. So I'll start with Grant today, and have them share a little bit. I'm going to stop share while they do this. Have them share a little bit about how things, their focus as they've come back from the holidays.
All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'd like to start by just appreciating Julie Gallagher and the 4 7th grade students that participated this evening. I just thought that was a fantastic presentation, and I would agree with the comment made about how it really just showed the learning process. And I really wanted to highlight, I don't know about all of you, but that's not the way that I was taught to write. Just the really close analysis of literature that the children are reading to understand story arcs like were described, and then to be able not only to understand that, but then to apply it to one's own writing is an incredibly advanced skill. And to hear the kids talking and reflecting about the decisions that they made in order to apply what they learned was just outstanding. So I'd like to appreciate Julie Gallagher. As you may be aware, she's our English Language Arts Department chair, and has really led an incredible progression in our instruction of English language arts, which has that level of instruction happening in reading workshop and writing workshop, I can say with confidence, in each of our grade level language arts classrooms. So that's incredible work, and I'm so thankful that it was able to be highlighted this evening. I'd also like to just give a brief summary around our response to the events of January 6th. I think many of us, our students included, were experiencing events in live time through news that was on in many of our households. And it was during the school day. And so I did have the opportunity in a fairly last minute communication to our staff, encourage people to broach the topic in homeroom with some talking points that I felt were relevant given the gravity of the situation, and really to inform students what was happening and allow them to ask some questions. And I'd just like to appreciate our faculty with the level of professionalism that they continue to take on these difficult topics and not shy away from leading discussions which are so incredibly important as our children grow into understanding themselves and our world. And we had a really fascinating discussion in our staff meeting that afternoon about the ways in which students responded, and the ways that teachers engaged varying perspectives, and just a willingness to take on a difficult topic as it was developing. The conversations continued throughout the week, and while I hesitate to say that there's good timing for an event like this, the fact that we started our all-school read of This Promise of Change the very next day, January 7th, is really an incredible just coincidence in timing. Because This Promise of Change is a text that we're reading, which does look at 1956 and school integration in Clinton, Tennessee. And we've been reading the text together, but also looking at that period in time, the civil rights movement, and really trying to understand how change really was influenced throughout this country. And the fact that there were, strong opinions on many sides of that particular issue, and the way that events unfold. Not to be a spoiler for the book, but for people that have looked at this period of time closely, you had the federal government and the state government simultaneously encouraging and discouraging states to be following a decision that was made by the U.S. Supreme Court 2 years prior. And so it's a really important time period for kids to understand that change in our country and change in a democratic government is a really complicated process in which there are disagreements by people at the very highest levels for how it should be handled. And in some cases, intervention by police, military, others to either support or dissuade people from doing things that the Supreme Court had already agreed needed to happen in our nation. So I won't go into great detail with that, but I think that we can agree there are some parallels with the way in which our world is currently unfolding. And the fact that we get to bring some of this history to light within our classrooms while we're reading a great book together, I think is an incredible opportunity for our students. And our all-school read will culminate on January 25th with an author visit from the author, which is one of the Clinton 12, who experienced this process of school integration in Clinton High School. So really an incredible opportunity, and one that I'm so proud to bring to our students in partnership with our amazing school librarian, Rebecca Jellin. So I would like to also highlight that this is a time of year where we are incredibly interested, in some ways concerned, and certainly paying very close attention to the performance of our students in our classes. And this year, above all else, really highlights the importance of doing so in really creative and thorough ways. So I'd just like to say that Ms. Holmes, our assistant principal, and I are really monitoring attendance patterns closely and really providing feedback to families and students about what we notice regarding attendance patterns. It's essential that students are attending their classes and engaging in their classes. And we're finding that with some notes of encouragement and reminders around expectations, we've started to see some improved attendance patterns. We also really looked closely at what we formerly would call, kind of in secondary education, a DFI list. That's D's and F's and incompletes. I think you all know I'm not one to really emphasize the importance of grades, but it is a tool that's very helpful to see which students are benefiting from their learning and which students are not enjoying success in class. And most importantly, we need to get to the root of what those issues interrupting success in class may be and addressing them. I'm pleased that that particular list included far fewer students than were included in our progress report list, which was the initial indication communication to families that a student was struggling in their classes. So we've actually had a fairly successful participation and performance rate among our students in their classes. Our teachers are just instrumental with this in each and every way. They have thorough discussions of student progress in their grade level meetings 2 times per month, as well as during our guidance meetings each week, and as well as during our specialist team meetings where we discuss students and anything that may be getting in the way of their performance in their classes. As I've highlighted before, we're learning to utilize our MAP growth assessment in both reading and mathematics, and have spent fairly considerable time in the past weeks understanding what's there and leveraging what's there to ensure that our students grow in both reading and mathematics throughout this year. And I'll conclude by just highlighting Ms. Sellers had mentioned to me this morning that on Monday, that was just yesterday, we had 100% of our students present in their morning homeroom class. She said in her entire career as a school secretary, she has never seen a class with 100% attendance. And I just wanted to highlight that because last week we were noticing the same thing, that there was incredibly consistent attendance from our students. And given that that was a distance learning week and the week after winter break, I just thought that was incredible and something to highlight. And it really shows me a few things. Number one, that we have very clear expectations for where students are supposed to be and when. But probably more importantly, that students are coming to their classes, I believe, because they're finding value there and they're finding connection with their peers and their teachers. And even in the midst of this really challenging pandemic where we're doing education in a way that I don't think any of us could have possibly imagined, there are elements that we can highlight, and one of which being that our students are really showing up and doing the work, as evidenced from Ms. Gallagher's presentation earlier. So I will go ahead and stop there, but of course, happy to answer any questions that you have based on this presentation or anything else you'd like to know about what's happening at Kent.
Great. Thank you, Grant. I think we'll wait on questions until Mary Ann goes.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Mary Ann, and I would be happy to give you an update on how things are going at Basich. It was very fun to start off this week with our hybrid instruction again and have students on campus. I think there was a really good positive vibe these past 2 days, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, it's fun for everyone to come back and be at school, but also I think the teachers are really settling into simultaneous instruction and really feeling good about their teaching, and you know, it just shows how everyone is feeling, and the kids are of course so excited to come back, so that was super fun. I do want to also address the events that happened at the Capitol and how we looked at that at Basich, and we really got a lot of direction from our social justice committee. And it's just a really nice, hardworking group of teachers that really address social justice and how to address it at the elementary level. And so that committee really started the process of reaching out to the staff and giving them ideas. And then there's a grade level representative from each grade level on the committee, so everybody could really think about how we could address the issues, but in an age appropriate way. So there was a lot of different ways to approach it, from finding your voice to the power of your voice, or taking action, problem solving around social issues, just dealing with what's fair, how's it feel to win or lose, those kind of things. And we found that some students were aware of what was going on because they had talked with their families, and others were not. And that was, either way, that was perfectly fine, because it gives us an opportunity, you know, to talk to students about, again, just social justice, which is a big focus this year. And, you know, this month being Black History Month and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s day next Monday, just kind of, you know, really considering of the through line about social justice in history and then up until now. And so we actually have another social justice committee meeting tomorrow afternoon, so that, you know, we can continue to create lessons and ideas for the whole staff to take advantage of. So I'm really proud of that, and that committee and the work that they do. I also just wanted to say quickly how impressed I was with the presentation from Kent and the English Language and Arts Department. And I totally teared up when that one young lady was reading the story ending. And I just want to say that that's really great, that the middle schoolers are doing such great work, led by great teachers doing, you know, the writing process is really hard. And so just to see that that's what they're coming up with is super impressive. So for Basich, and an update around how we are addressing any kind of learning struggles, social, emotional, behavioral issues with our students, we follow our multi-tiered systems of support. And so with that, we have, you know, tier 1 supports, which are the supports that everybody gets. So whether it's in the classroom through differentiated instruction, whether it's during student support time, you know, we have a lot of different tier 1 supports that everybody gets. And that's what all teachers are working, you know, the core curriculum, the flexible grouping, social emotional learning delivered by our counselor, those kind of things. And of course, the social justice too. But then when we're working on, okay, what do we do next? And we still have students who are struggling. Our grade level teams meet weekly, and they review student data, and they're the ones who refer students to our intervention programs. We have math intervention and reading intervention. They also are the ones who provide systems of support through the school day for students, using our paraprofessionals, using our enrichment teachers. And we also have our MTSS team, which is made up of, you know, special education teachers, our ELD coordinator, our counselor, administration. And that's where we also review data, receive teacher concerns where teachers, you know, worked on, figured out every possible way they could think of to support this student and might still need some extra support. So we invite them to those meetings weekly, and they can communicate their concerns, and then we brainstorm and come up with strategies and goals for those students, for those teachers to go back and work on and put in place, and we follow up. Sometimes we get to this place where we're still continuing to find that students need different kind of support or help. So we have student support team meetings, or student study team meetings they're called, and where we're with the parents and the student and the teachers and members of the MTSS team. And again, same process, you know, put in interventions, create goals, monitor, and come back and see if what we have done is have supported the students and made gains. And I just want to say that our teachers have done just a really excellent job of, you know, looking at student data and really thinking about how to connect the dots with what kind of interventions and supports we need based on what the students need. And there's been some really creative work with our paraprofessionals, and even now that we're, you know, settled in with simultaneous instruction, we have lots of creative ideas as far as grade levels are beginning to think about grouping, you know, maybe during their math time, the few students are having trouble with long division to work with a specific paraprofessional for 20 minutes 3 times a week, and those kind of things. So I really feel great about the process that teachers are following, and I feel good about my ability at this point, or getting better at looking at ARIES and being able to see school-wide data and, you know, Lexia and all the programs that we have that provide extra supports for students and seeing their progress. So I feel like, again, it's been one of those years where I think we've kind of had the tired out analogy of building the ship as we're sailing it, or the plane as we're flying it. But I think at this point, and all year we have done a great job of following our MTSS process. But now that we've settled into a teaching model, it makes it even easier and more clear the routes that we can take to provide the extra supports for students. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'll be glad to answer questions when we're finished.
Great, thank you, Marianne.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just wanted to suggest we could either do a quick break for a couple minutes before we start into questions or feedback from our public, or we could have discussion as a board first if there's any questions directly we want to ask staff, and then go into questions and concerns from our community. Either one. In the past, we've done where we've waited until all of the feedback comes in from our community before we have discussion.
I would suggest we just keep going. We don't have a bunch of hands up.
Okay,
So,
okay. That's perfect. All right, so I guess this is the time, I'm gonna say it myself, I need to have 1 minute break to use the restroom. But this is the time for our community to raise hands, and you will be called on, and there'll be 2 minutes per person. And we'll start that in.
How long a break are we taking?
Should we say, what time is it now? 6:52. Should we say 6:55? Do you think we're that fast? Okay, 6:55, we're back.
3-minute break.
Thank you. 3 minutes, 2 cups of tea.
Did that one sheet that everyone needed to sign make it all the way around?
Yes.
I put that in this folder. So Davina still needs to sign it. Just one that was for everybody. I mean, you know, but I signed these.
I mean, she can get in. when she wants to.
Oh, yeah, I think these are all.
Copies of the who reads book are available for us.
I know, I asked for it on this. I should follow up.
If you wouldn't mind.
Yes, yes. It's really good, I'm reading it right now.
That's great.
Thank you.
We have about 3 p.m. so.
Oh, great, okay. Annie, are you colder now or are you the same temperature?
Should I close it?
No, I think it's good. I think it's probably good to keep it, it'll keep us awake and
Yeah.
it's good health wise too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking that is. But it helped to cool off.
Yeah.
Which is good.
It's only in leaving, you notice how hot it is in here.
Oh, really?
I'm just taking the cool
I think it's
down.
cooled down a little
Really?
bit.
Oh, God, it was really hot earlier.
I know.
Yeah.
But yes. All right. Well, thank you. I think we are.
Just hit 6:55.
Exactly. We're keeping it to the letter. Okay, so we're back. And it is time for any hands that would like to be raised. We can call on you, or actually Raquel will call on you. And again, it's 2 minutes per person. And please, the floor is yours. So we welcome all feedback.
Sarah, you're watching the time.
I will be timekeeper, yes. That's why my phone is out.
Okay, so Alyssa.
Great. Welcome, Elisa.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. So I wanted to thank each of you for raising the great questions that you did about the play structure. I think that we really do need to consider our budget. The amount we're talking about, I think we should be mindful of optics, honestly. And I also think that KIC should be able to explore whether or not this would be a good year to repurpose funds. I'd never have done this kind of, I don't know, law, or I don't really know how the foundation works, but it does seem to me that most foundations are able to repurpose specific funds, and if there is permission from the donors. And I think if the donors knew that the funds were going to the general fund because there is such a need, that might be a reason to reconsider. I really appreciated what Sarah said about having the rainy day fund. I'm not sure, because it was in January, I think, how many families are aware of how tight our budgets are right now. So I just wanted to bring those points up. And let's see. I just wondered also if there could be a little bit more clarification about what the teachers and district have agreed to. Because although I appreciate the presentation and I tried to follow along, it wasn't clear to me what day to day is going to be the same and what's going to change. So thanks, that's all.
Great, thank you, Lisa.
Sorry, I was taking notes. Okay, so next hand, Kira.
Great, welcome again, Kira.
Hi, just some comments about the playground again. Elisa, I hear you. It's just not possible. I mean, it's not so simple, unfortunately. And at this rate, it's something that should have already been taken care of, you know, a year ago. As of this point, this is something our community needs. It's not an ADA compliant structure and area for the kids. It hasn't been for 20 years, and it should have been fixed 20 years ago. That's number one. Number two is the cost is going up. The cost will only continue to go up. Today it's X amount. In 4 years, maybe it'll be $700,000 and there'll be no money, not 1 cent for that. And it's not like we can go back to our community and ask for another bond. The other thing is, this is money that it's not coming out of the district budget. This is, you know, the extra to cover this would essentially come from the bond money. And again, and lastly, the social emotional piece for our kids is really important. If they have something like this to go back to in the fall, I think, again, and I've said this before, for our community, it's extremely important. And I just don't think that we can continue to prolong something that should have already been done. And I frankly, as KIC president, I'm getting to a point where this is, I hate to say it, it's getting a little embarrassing. So I'd like to get it taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira.
Brad Whitelock.
Welcome again, Brad.
Appreciate it. So just a couple of quick things on COVID. You know, this virus is, as I've always said, is the only enemy that we have. And I know that people sometimes think that getting this virus is somehow a commentary on them, that it is somehow a moral or ethical failing on their part. And I just want to remind everybody that it's not. You can do everything correct and you can still get this virus. You can be cavalier and of course get this virus. But I want to encourage people that, as uncomfortable as it might be, and I'm old enough to remember sitting and going to get tested for AIDS for the first time, and all of the discomfort of having to answer questions about one's sexual history. And, you know, it wasn't comfortable, but at the end of the day, right, it mattered to a lot of other people. So truly, we are connected by this virus. And I just want to encourage everyone, if you're sick, if you've got symptoms, please, you know, no one should judge you. And if they do, that's their problem, not yours. But please let us know at school. Let us know quickly. Let us know as soon as possible so that we can take the action that we need to take to protect all of us. Second, I just wanted to point out, because as a math teacher, I just feel the need, the dashboard that you shared, I really appreciated it, but I don't know, I assume it was the latest information you were able to get, but one of the dates on that for the transmission rate was December the 15th, which is almost 4 weeks ago. And the other slide, the date on it was 12/26, which I believe was about 17 days ago. So I believe things are a little bit more intense than they were then, unfortunately. So, you know, I'm used to having students find my errors all the time and pointing out any place where I might be inconsistent, especially with my graph reading. So just thought I'd throw that out there. And lastly, just, I'm sure Marianne didn't intend to, but she misspoke. Just so everyone's clear, February is Black History Month. But yes, this month is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. Thank you, Stevie Wonder, because without him, we never would have gotten this date passed. Through the government, through the legislature. He played a big part in it. So there's your history lesson, your math lesson, and a comment on public health, all under 2 minutes. Have a great night. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Brad.
Erica.
Welcome.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to sort of back Kira up a little bit around the Base-Itch playground. I happen to know of a lot of parents that are feeling very frustrated that has not happened, who donated to that fund in need. And I think in a year when the dedicated parent volunteers at KIC are having a really hard time getting people to buy in to donating to the KIC Family Giving campaign, if we're talking about optics, I think if people lose faith that the money they give is going to go to what KIC says it's going to go to, that's going to make it very hard for them to raise money in the future. So I just wanted to put that out there. As I say, I hear parents complaining about this. And so I just wanted to share that perspective.
Great. Thank you, Erica.
Gretchen Harris.
Welcome back, Gretchen.
Thank you again. I want to add my 2 cents about the Base-Itch playground. My oldest daughter will be 26 next week. She was in 1st grade when that playground was built at Base-Itch, and she played on that playground. When she walks by we go on walks together, she points out the age of that playground. And it's kind of personal because I've seen her play on it and be around it. There are parts of the playground which really, really don't feel like they're the best place for our kids to play. And it has been in the works to replace this playground. And I really think it is in good faith for the community to replace the playground. And right now is the best opportunity to do it. We are not using the playground on recess right now. And it's a golden opportunity to get this work done so that when we do have school in what will be our new normal in the fall, the kids will have a great place to play. But again, 20 years is an incredibly long time to have the same play structure. And we really need to make it accessible to all of our students when we have all of our students back at school. Thank you.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Meredith Upson.
Welcome, Meredith.
Hi, thanks so much. I wanted to just acknowledge that I think as many people do, we really appreciate hearing that there's agreement between the teachers and the board and the school with regard to the MOU and the next steps. I know we've all been quite saddened by the lack of trust between the groups and want the teachers to feel supported and safe and as they go back to school. I guess when I wanted to just sort of switch gears is I've been a bit surprised that the focus and has been so squarely on the in-person versus the remote learning rather than the rigor of the curriculum. I have two kids at Kent School, and my 8th grader has only 2 sessions of history a week with about 60 kids. His 4th period is typically just a study hall, not very much sort of direct learning during that period. So I'm just wondering, although I know we're sort of tackling this first issue and everybody's sort of taking a breath and a sigh of relief with that, is there some discussion and timing around revisiting the curriculum, whether people decide to stay at home or in person? So thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Meredith.
Okay, we don't have any other hands up at this point.
Okay, last chance. Any other hands? All right. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. All right, now we're going to move into any questions that board members have for staff based on their reports. If there is any, there may not be any that I know we were asking a few during it, but I just wanted to make sure everyone felt like they had the opportunity.
Got a couple of
Yeah.
things. A couple observations and a question for you, Raquel. First of all, I'd like to make a plug for the working group that's going to come together. I think that's going to be a really important part of planning during purple for what happens during red. I think we all need to remember how important that work is going to be during January. So a plug for that. Secondly, echoing Grant and Marianne's celebration of the consistency of curriculum across all grade levels in English language arts. I've seen the benefit of having that consistent curriculum across all the grade levels, and to see it so clearly evidenced today is a testament to Susan Warnick and Rebecca Yellen and all of the teachers that touch language arts, and that we say it a lot, but a recognition of literacy and a culture of readers is really a great thing to see. The question for Raquel, there's an upcoming deadline, February 1st, for applying for the first wave of money that came out of the new Newsom budget. We're all good on that?
Yeah, so the county office is working directly with the state right now for the template that we would need to complete to try to make it as streamlined as possible so that we wouldn't have challenges when it comes time to apply for those dollars. It's been couched as a grant application or more of like I said, like a template to complete. And much of what we've done through our 30-point plan, that's a site-specific safety plan, we will be able to utilize that, and that aligns directly with the upgrades from the Cal OSHA requirements. So all of that is in alignment. We have not received it just yet, but in the updates that I had from our county superintendent of schools last week and even during the holidays, was that they're working on getting all that stuff for us so that can really help us streamline.
And those two deadlines are February 1st and March 1st, I think.
I'm not positive on the deadlines, but I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, but I feel really comfortable where we're at because I've done a lot of proactive work, and with the support of our county office and their close connection with the state too. So.
Any other questions from board members? Go ahead, Davina.
Yeah, this is for both campuses. So just, when we were in the spring, I think there was some discussion that we had around homework and not necessarily it being a time, given all of the stress of the pandemic when this first hit, being, just needing to focus on just the time of the school day. And I do remember us kind of hearing some different views on that. I did want to share feedback that I've heard from the community and really a desire to put out some more work for students because for students right now, their day is shorter and then they are also doing less activities. And so they have a lot of time. And so I'm just wondering how we can use this opportunity and be creative around that, because I am hearing sort of across the board, same with my own kids, of no work to do after school hours. And if there's a rationale around that the school wants to put out, maybe that needs to be explained to parents around the why, and maybe there is a rationale. So anyways, it's just a feedback point that I know that there's kids that could be going deeper into their learning since the day is shorter right now. So that would just, I'm not really sure where we stand on that at both campuses.
I mean, I can respond to that first. I guess my first thought is that it's a little complicated than it was. Well, like everything, it's more complicated than it was in normal time. We were accustomed to a instructional day that was 8:30 to 3:30, and that what was on top of that was a kind of a board policy, which gave us some direction about what homework was to look like outside of that instructional day. And now, as you're well aware, we're in a time where there's synchronous learning and also asynchronous learning, and it's difficult to really nail down what assignment may be considered an asynchronous task that is a part of a class period, or perhaps something that's tackled during Skills Center or small group time if a student's not invited to small group time, versus something that a student would do after the 1:30 instructional day is over. And so homework is a term that doesn't mean what it used to mean. So I would agree, and I hear your feedback, Davina, and certainly heard what Meredith had to say as well about her son's experience in 8th grade. And I think this is a topic that we should further explore at each school site. We have some students that are really struggling through the workload, and there's other students that we're hearing that are finished with their workload at the end of school. And then we have this other difficult challenge of the fact that kids tend to be motivated to finish their work quickly. And when they're on a computer screen and can multitask, like some of us occasionally do when we're on a Zoom call, you have the challenge of assigning work that will just distract the student from engaging in the next period's class so that they can be done on time. So I guess I just highlight those pieces to say, like with many things, it's a really delicate balance to strike. We certainly don't want to assign work for work's sake. And I think our teachers do an incredible job of ensuring that there's really specific learning outcomes for assignments that they give. But I think that the point is well taken, that in all of our efforts to really try to improve the in-person experience and envision a future of what an improved in-person experience can look like when it is safe to do so, we want to be sure not to neglect really enhancing what we currently have and making sure that it's meeting the needs of the kids. So those are my initial thoughts, and I would certainly acknowledge that that's a topic that we should continue to monitor and ensure that we are providing our kids with what they deserve in the way of learning from the work we assign.
Thank you.
Hi, Marianne from Basage. So on our behalf, as far as the way homework works, I mean, we are not assigning homework in the traditional sense, but teachers are assigning extension activities or intervention type activities, like, this child should be doing an extra half an hour of Lexia every night, or additional reading, or maybe some math programs to help them learn the multiplication tables, those kind of things. I've definitely been a part of meetings with families or with teachers where they've provided extension activities for students. Also on the other end too, where if they need some additional higher level activities or things like that to keep them engaged. And then of course, we still have our enrichment board, which is available obviously to students at all times, but the idea was that, you know, after lunch, that they could also go to the enrichments website and do some of the activities from our enrichment board. But we have not been assigning traditional homework at Basich. And I do know also just work completion. So there are some students that need to continue their classwork at the end of the school day if they didn't finish. And teachers encourage them to do that too. So there's things being turned in on Google Drive and Seesaw after lunch that students are completing that didn't finish during the school day. So I would say that at this point, we're doing what would be more like a more individualized approach to any kind of work that's done outside of the actual instructional day.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be, you know, not to be answered now, but I would say from a community perspective, I know I'm not the only one that shares this, especially with concerns around, you know, learning loss and keeping students engaged. It does seem like a time to ramp up than ramp down. I feel like our kids are capable of a lot more. And there's a lot of students that, you know, and I don't mean busy work at all. I just, you know, even if it's optional work, because then you have an equity situation where you have families, you know, enrolling in outside academics because they don't have, and you know, they're not feel like they're getting enough. So that's just a feedback point and maybe something to check in with other parents about and get more data on around what's actually, you know, the amount of work and the amount of rigor that's actually happening.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, maybe other people were aware. I only have Kent students, so I was not aware that there was no homework at Basich right now. That was not my understanding. So that seems worthy of further discussion.
I don't believe I'm not sure if there's 5th grade homework at Kent.
And I'm not sure I would say that there's no homework, like it never happens. I'm just saying that it's not in the traditional sense where it's an expectation that it's happening at every grade level, every week, every day, those kind of things. For, you know, 10 minutes for this grade level, 20 minutes for the next grade level, that kind of thing.
I think, you know, in 4th grade at Basich last year, students were writing 2 papers a week. So the amount of writing that students were getting, and I have no idea what's happening in 4th grade, but it's just a big shift. So I think without the community understanding the rationale or why, you know, if there is a rationale, it's great. But it's just such a change for what has been the practices in the past.
And, you know, I just wanted to make the comment too that I know there was a couple people mentioned this in the feedback from the community that just took place. I think some more clarification about what's in the TA would be helpful for our community, because one of the areas that's in it is about looking at hybrid instruction and enhancements to hybrid instruction. And this working group that's being, you know, that's going to be meeting, that's something they're going to be looking at quite closely. So I think just, you know, providing that, what that means to our community, and how someone like Meredith, I'm going to just put it out there, you know, maybe something that you'd want to get involved with, or Lisa, who also raised that question about what's in. So I think that those opportunities, I think, should be highlighted. And Davina, what you just mentioned, I think, is another example of something that could be looked at in this working group. You know, and if I wasn't mistaken, just to be clear, Dave, you just asked that question about funding. One of the areas that Newsom projected is that there was going to be funding for learning loss as well. And I don't know if that's something that we qualify for, but that is another area that's of interest, right?
Yeah, it's acknowledging that there's going to be a need for the opportunity gaps for kids in terms of their learning progression. So,
right.
So yeah, it's like I mentioned before, it's some of those 4 pillars,
which is great.
and it's aligned with our priority selection.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a more formulaic,
Right,
that part of
okay.
it, and Kentfield's not at the top of the list.
I imagine,
those
but
elements.
yes, I imagine, but yes, it was still, it caught my eye, because I think
Yes.
that's on everyone's mind. I think what
Of
Davina
course.
mentioned, it does not seem the time that we would want to be ramping down, but ramping up, as we look to especially summer and the fall.
I'll have more about that when I talk about JLAC.
Great, okay, perfect. Anyway, any other questions or feedback?
The
from
only
staff?
other question I have relates to the play structure. So we had already approved 150,000. So what's in front of us tonight is whether we add 146,000 to that budget.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I have for you, Raquel, is like, is there any way to get this done for something less than the 396 that's being currently proposed? And I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but I really struggle with this number. And I think it's an incredibly valuable piece of our community. I understand the parents who donated wanting it done. I think it should be done. Like, I 100% support all of those concepts. It's a huge number. And I don't know whether you and Paul feel like you have exhausted every opportunity to create as small a number as possible on this front. I mean, obviously still doing something that's well done and safe and good, but I mean,
I'll talk about that for a second, because I have been the board representative on the committee. So the $100,000 for the play structure is what it is, right? It really doesn't matter if we put a $50,000 play structure there or a $500,000 play structure. Everything else has to be done to the extent that it's currently being imagined, right? You have to go in there and scrape the ground clean. You have to build up the retaining wall to create a flat environment out there. You have to build the ramp. You have to build the drainage. You have to pull out the existing rubber, dispose of it at great expense. You have to put in new rubber, right?
Right.
All of that has to happen no matter what else you plug in.
I totally get that.
We looked at a wide range of options. Can we relocate it? Can we split it into islands? Can we put it in different places that are more flat and more easily accessible? Having been part of all these discussions with Paul's great work getting this bid now by 3 people, and numbers coming in really very close, I'm confident in saying that I don't believe there is a way to do this more cheaply. I think it's binary.
And I understand the play structure itself is one fixed, actually relatively modest
Right.
part of this
I
expense.
know.
But I look at this and it's the field prep, the poured in place, and the ramp is a 260. You can build a building for $260,000. I mean, a small one.
Sarah, but you can't build a building for $260,000 anymore.
All right, maybe not a building, but I mean,
In
Marin County, I take that back, you're right, it's an overstatement. But $260,000 for drainage, a ramp, removal of existing rubber, and pouring something new seems exceedingly high to me. 150 I could understand, but 260 we've kind of hit.
One important part of that is correcting for the slope. You know, you recognize that wall that it's up against is considerably higher than the level of the field, right? So we need to fix all of that slope in order to make it usable by all of our students. So you have to create enough retaining wall and flat space to create a flat environment, sort of building a stage, if you will, that you can ramp up to, and then you're all at the same level. So you're right, it's a lot of money. I mean, paying $50,000 to dispose of the existing rubber is a lot of money.
And just to give you input, I looked at all other options because the accessibility issues, I'm extremely limited. There's no other way to do that project without making it accessible for everybody. And it's not just concrete, but it's asphalt, it's drainage pipe, it's the scope is actually bigger than just pouring a concrete ramp and leveling it off. There's a lot more concrete around the sides, holding up ramps, walkways, and retaining wall for the back wall where the classroom is. It's unfortunately, I know it sounds like a lot, but the numbers were only between 2 different contractors, $2,000 difference. So I feel that the numbers were right on what it's going to take to do that project. I think they all looked at what the engineer design was, and they were only $2,000 off. So,
and Paul, I just want to say all of these questions are in no way a lack of appreciation for all the work that you and this committee and staff have done on this issue. I really appreciate all of the effort. It's helpful to hear that there were 2 bids that were so close. I would have liked to have known that just for future feedback, because it is such a big number for them to be so close is a material fact for me as I look at things like this from a budget standpoint. So thank you for all that additional information, Paul. It's very helpful.
And just to help with that, Sarah, so what we did to get these estimated costs is I took the bids that we had, And so one agency gave us 2 bids and one gave us 1 bid. So I took all 3 of those and we did the average. So that's why those are estimated there. So it's a combination of what those bids were, just for
So,
clarity.
and just because I'm somewhat numbers focused, I would rather see all 3 bids
Yeah.
than an average, because that helps me evaluate the reasonableness of the number to see that multiple people have come in that range. That's, I mean, that's just my own.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, are we?
Any other questions on reports? No. Look at you. Okay, I think we can move forward. Yeah, so I think we can move into the action agenda. For the record, again, we are ahead of schedule. Just saying. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the warrants for December 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I had one question, and I'm sorry, Raquel, I should have emailed this ahead of time, and so I apologize. If it's one that you can't answer, it's okay. The Stephen Roach Accountancy, it's a progress billing number 2. I'm sorry, I hit the word. It's a line item for the 1920 audit, a progress billing number 2 for $12,000. So that's a remaining payment for last, on the second page of the warrants.
It's already 8 from the last.
Yeah, it's December 18th, sorry, the date will help you sort it.
Oh, okay, December 18th, Stephen Roach, progress billing number 2. I would, it says there that it's part of the audit, so I know that Kirsten has been working on that, and I don't know if we want to call on her, if we can just get back to you about it.
You can get back to me about it, that's fine. It made me wonder a little bit. I mean, I know we've been very happy with their auditing work, but just, again, given that we have to scrutinize everything in our budget, understanding the full cost of the audit and how that tracks to other options that might be out there, not that we haven't been very happy with their work, but it's a big enough, if that's only part of the payment, it's a big enough number that I just wanted to dig into it. And I'm sorry for not telling you ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think it might be in 2 parts. I could be wrong. This is going to be it's definitely a Kirsten question though.
Yeah, and we don't need to take time with it now. It's just as we look for next year and contracts.
All right, any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the increase to the substitute teacher daily rate from $150 to $160?
So moved.
Thanks, Dave.
Second.
Thanks.
So let me kind of.
Discussion,
just real
please,
quick
yes.
background. So this came forward, interest in looking at increasing our substitute rates. So you have in the packet just all the rates from highest to lowest. And you'll see it goes as high as 135 per day to 180. And what this county has tried to do typically is our districts work collaboratively so that we stay at the same amount or very close to. But this year you can see it tends to be a little bit more discrepancy. And so in order to maintain some level of competitiveness, and especially in the time of COVID, to be sure that we don't have declines of subs as needed, the request was, can we look at increasing our rate to 160? And so I did talk with Kirsten about kind of what does this mean for our budget, and it's not material. She doesn't feel like it was going to be anything that would be that significant. We've been able to do a lot of internal coverage, quite frankly, in terms of substituting, which has been good, but it does allow us to be a little bit more competitive. And you'll see what was pretty interesting is the Larkspur Porter-Madera rate have gone up so high.
They just recently did that too. I want to say in the last month or so.
And just for people to know that rate, the way I read it on the documents is that it's just for this year specifically. So I think
That's
part
what I
of it
thought,
has to do with
yes.
COVID. So, it can be with an asterisk, but just wanted to bring that forward as you consider.
Would ours be just for the year or just?
That could be a decision.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question.
I have a question on how this works for Hal. So, are substitutes, are they hired at the county level, or are they hired, like, can you just explain kind of how that substitute pool works?
Yeah, so it starts at the county level. They apply there and they get a substitute card, and then they identify a district in which they would want to work. And then from there, they could be focused on for our district. So they might say they want to work for the Kentland School District, and then that's when they become part of our list of subs that we would access.
Okay, can they write multiple districts?
Yep. They
Okay.
can say they want all districts, and they can say they don't want a district, right?
Okay. Okay, so I think it's really important that we stay on top of this. I'm glad that you're bringing this to us because it's so difficult to get substitutes, and we definitely want to be a desirable place to want people, to respond to the call when we need it, and especially this year.
What's interesting to me though is that looking at this list, 150 looks pretty competitive to me. I mean, Reed is at 150. Mill Valley is at 160. Admittedly, Larkspur Corte Madera is an outlier, but if you throw that out as not something you'd track to, I would expect that the only one that's at 160 that's really comparable to our district is Mill Valley. The others are very different schools in terms of where, as a teacher, what you're teaching and where you're teaching. To see Ross Valley and Reed at 150 and Ross at 155, I hesitate to go to 160. I don't feel like we're not competitive. I hear you saying that it's not material, but I feel like at this point everything's material, and we don't know how many sub days we might need at some points. So I'm not inclined to increase it, but that's just
I see what you're saying. I'm gonna align with staff recommendation on this. I understand it's an actual dollar cost. I think we need to have that flexibility. I think cost of our substitutes are key, as Davina pointed out, and I think it's probably best to have this in our back pocket and avoid using it to the extent possible with internal coverage.
Another way we could do this, I think, to Andy's point, is maybe we revisit this. For, I don't know when is the appropriate time, but I wonder if, because I only heard from Larkspur Corte Madera that they had done that very recently in response to this year. It doesn't look like the other ones have made any adjustments. But also, could you just highlight the need? I mean, obviously I understand the need of wanting to remain competitive, but have we found situations that it's been very difficult to get a substitute because they're farmed out to other, is it really a pressing need?
So I actually would turn to the sites to speak to. I will say myself, I did do some calling, and I went down the list of a list of 30, and I got all no's, right? So it can be challenging, but not as, and then I don't know, the no can be varied, right? Right. No can be varied. So I don't know if we want to have the principal speak to the challenges with coverage. I do know that the coverage of substitutes has just been a challenge, as Davina mentioned. Even pre-COVID,
yeah, that's been a challenge too. Yeah,
and so in COVID, it's been a challenge. So the difference is when we're in distance learning only, you don't have as many subs because there's more flexibility in terms of staffing and being able to teach from distance. And so you just don't have the sub need. Now that we're back in hybrid, right, where we have people on site, I think it's, and then now on top of everything, it's the asterisk of people, having a concern to come to a site. So, and that's what I think I got the turn away when people turned to me and said no to me. But then I took myself out of the one calling for the subs.
So that would be what I wonder. Like, I have a hard time thinking that the no is based on the rate. I don't know. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of other reasons, potentially, especially this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
I think it's more when I say about the rate, it's if a sub has multiple requests, it's just I think most of the time, unless something is super far away from their house, they're going to pick the higher rate. That's my.
Right. And I guess my point is the only school that I think has a higher rate that's close to us, other than Larkspur Corte Madera, is Mill Valley. Yeah. Lincoln Union, Galena, Stinson, those are the totally different drives.
Agreed.
Right, but if we have a higher rate, then we're a differentiator if they have multiple requests.
Lisa has her hand up, and so I know she manages this. I can't.
Oh, that'd be good. Let's hear Lisa. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Oh, we can't hear you.
She's unmuted though. I saw her unmuted.
Wow, can you type something?
I know. Lisa, can you hear us? No, you're muted again.
Let's see if. And Raquel, she's not muted at our end anymore.
Now mine doesn't show that she's muted.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
So,
Yeah, it's her.
Would Grant know to provide insight or on behalf of Kent?
I mean, I can speak to substitute coverage as being almost a daily consideration and challenge. Lisa Sandberg does incredible work at Kent to help us stay organized, and she's really well connected with the substitute pool because she's been doing this for a while. I can't speak about how substitutes are prioritizing which jobs that they take, but I think Davina made a pretty valid point regarding if a substitute has multiple jobs, that there is a simple way of deciding based on compensation. And I will say that our most sought after substitutes are substitutes that work in our surrounding districts, and they're known to work in our surrounding districts, and they often get picked up into long-term substitute jobs. And so I will just say, the quality of the instructional program is pretty significantly impacted when either we have a substitute that's not familiar with our school or not experienced with teaching, and or we have to kind of stretch to find coverage by assigning other people on site to those responsibilities when they do have other responsibilities that they have on their plate for the day, including Raquel, who has generously donated her time to that role numerous times so far this year. So it is an issue. It has been an issue since I started at Kent, and this is certainly one strategy to address it.
Right. Thank you for that insight.
Thanks, Grant.
So I have a question. In terms of budget, Raquel, do you know off the top of your head, on average, how much the district spends on substitutes?
I don't, that would be Kirsten, I can
Okay.
follow back up. But I would say this year is an anomaly year
Right,
too.
right.
So, but I can have it be.
Okay, yeah.
If you could email all of us, that would be.
Yeah.
I would probably do a 3-year average.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be
This year would be
because
low
this-
and then high, right?
Because of last spring we had.
Right.
So.
Because distance, they wouldn't have. less.
Right.
I guess the
Well,
question,
and
do we
we
feel ready to vote on this tonight, or would you rather wait until the next meeting? I guess that's the question.
I'd rather wait to get more information.
Okay.
Is that gonna put you
I
in
don't
the
know if, yeah.
No, we've been going this far. I mean, it's,
Okay.
if there's additional information the board needs to feel more informed with the decision, I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Raquel, the other thing that might be helpful, in doing a 3-year average, I just know my child has had a number of different long-term subs for various somewhat unusual reasons in the last few years. And so I wonder if there's a way to pull
Break it
out
out.
the long-term
Yes.
sub piece of this, because I think those were unexpected
Yeah.
and not typical scenarios, but there were several of them in a row for the last few years. So
Yeah.
isolating those versus the average kind of, what other
Just the
reasons
daily,
we might
yeah.
have. I mean, there's gonna always be some long-term subs probably for health or pregnancy or
Mhm.
whatever reasons, but I feel like we've had more than normal lately.
Yeah. Okay, so with that said then, I move that we pull this then, if that's okay, and then we'll relook at it next month, which will be in
The February.
February, which is just a few weeks away.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward then, we're going into M2 facilities. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the adjustment to the basic play structure budget? And notice there is not a number associated with this.
So the amount, I can pull that slide back up.
It's 146.
It's 146,000.
Okay.
And,
I think I'd like to include that as part of the.
yeah, we
okay.
would, for sure, because, we would need to, have the amount, but it's on this slide, just, we can put it in the minutes.
Okay.
That's
So
what we're going.
I'll make that motion
Yes, please, thank you.
And I'll second.
and we'll have discussion.
Yes, now we're going to discussion. So again, this is for an additional 146,000. Anyone, I know we've talked a lot about this already. Is there any further?
I want to just sort of summarize my views, if you don't mind.
Okay,
So I'm going to advocate for supporting this increased request, and I come at it from the position of what is best for the kids. And I really feel strongly that we need to focus on that, and we need to join Kira and the KIC board in thinking about this long term, right? We have been so fortunate to have KIC support the district to the tune of $1 million a year for so many years. They are striving as hard as they can to meet their requirement for this year, and she's shown us the picture of what they're looking at for next year. So I think if we damage the fundraising ability of KIC by not honoring this specific request that people have voted with their wallets, I think it really wounds the district longer term, and to a much greater extent than I feel the allocation of these very restricted capital improvement dollars, which need to be spent or allocated before March or May of 2021. I think it causes long-term damage and problems. Even in the short term, the prospect of disappointing these donors, not helping support KIC's initiative for this year, I think and then finding ourselves on the far side of this with a playground that's reaching the end of its life, and then really not having not only the bond funds to spend on this, but the support of our community to get this done. So in the interest, it's not going to get cheaper. It has to get done. I think it's the best. I think it's in the best interest of the kids. Doing it, not doing it, doesn't solve our very pressing budget problems. But I think it would be best for the kids and best for the district, short, medium, and long term, to go ahead with this increase request.
Does anyone else feel like they'd like to speak before we vote? The only thing I'd like to add, Dave, I think you said that so eloquently, is I do think what really stood out to me was that what we stand for as a district is accessibility for all kids. And that's something I think that's loud and clear, that the current state of affairs, it is not. And that's not something I think that we would want to maintain in the future. I think that that's a strong message of saying this is a structure that can be used by all kids in our community. So, but I agree with everything you just said. And I do also want to acknowledge, I feel very strongly about the AC. That has been just an ongoing concern. I feel like we've been talking about it for years now. And I do think that it'll be possible to do both. I feel like those are the two pressing ones that I see on the deferred maintenance list. I hear everything you're saying though, Sarah, because I do think that's looking at the Grant Grover funds. I think we get a lot more careful about, like what you said, is carefully considering if we do hit bathrooms, for example. That might be just something we just hold off altogether and leave that really as a rainy day fund.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, I actually don't disagree with anything David just said.
Yeah.
I come at this just with a profound concern about fiscal responsibility,
Right.
and hearing that there were 3 bids that came in and that these numbers came the way they did. While I might like them to be different, if that's the reality, then I mean, I'm prepared to vote in favor of this too. Just to be clear, like I'm not. It's just it's a big number, and we've got a lot of stuff on our list of stuff to do. So.
All right. All right.
Last thing I'll just reiterate about all of the reasons why I would vote yes for this is we're not going to be able to come up with the money 3 years from now. So the fact that we would have to return the money to me just feels very irresponsible. So to me, I don't see that money going back into, as Kara explained, into our general fund and us going that route. So it does seem like kind of we're taking care of something now that long term we're going to have to do anyways.
Yeah. All right. I think that's, any last thoughts?
I agree.
All right. I think we can go for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. All right. Looking forward to that. So we're going to have
Thank
a
you,
ribbon
Paul.
cutting in
Yes,
when
thank
was it?
you, Paul.
August? Yes. Thank you, Paul, for staying so
Yes.
long in this meeting and all of your
And for all your
insights.
work.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, okay, moving forward into M3, policy. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the inter-district transfer request into Kentfield School District from the Larkspur Corte Madera School District for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year? Student is in 8th grade.
But not in 8th grade.
So currently attending Kentfield moved out of the area.
Yes.
Oh.
Wait, I'm sorry.
So can we move and second and then discuss?
Yeah, let's do that,
Okay.
exactly.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Discussion, yes.
Context.
The student is a current 8th grader attending Kent. but it resides in the Larkspur Corte Madera School District, so needed to have an application from there to be able to continue here.
For the remainder of this school year.
For the remainder of this school year, yeah.
Got it.
You see that, yeah.
Is the parent here? I don't know, if the parent is here, please feel free to raise your hand.
Okay, I had not understood that it was an existing
Nor I.
student, so, for whatever reason, but.
I think in the interest of explaining, this was a job that Quackle.
Please, David, take the clock. We just got a committee assignment.
So in the interest of outlining and being clear about a consistent application of our policy, we do not typically accept interdistrict transfers, except in rare situations like this, when we have a student who's been with us, who is finishing out a particular year. So consistent with our reliance on community support, our understanding of our limited resources and our need to meet the needs of our community first and foremost, we typically do not accept interdistrict transfers other than this type of situation.
Right, and because it seems it's best for the student to
And
let
it's
finish
best for the
the year.
student, absolutely.
It's focused on what's best for that student who's already one of our students, to have them finish the year.
Right. All right, thank you, David. All right, so discussion, I think, Dana, you don't have your hand up. Okay, I thought you did. All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. We're going into governance. Board meeting highlights.
Clearly the education
I know,
showcase.
I know.
I mean,
That
so
was-
impressive,
so
so
amazing.
stunningly impressive.
Yeah, and it reminds us why we're here, right?
Yeah.
This is
That
really-
and the ratification of the
The
tentative agreement.
yes.
The tentative agreement and the fact.
Is that a public document? Can that be linked in the, or do we want to put a summary or something,
Perhaps
right?
only now that it's been ratified.
Right, okay, so
Right
that
now.
can't.
That was the
Great.
big time thing.
Right,
Okay,
now
good.
it's been ratified.
Agreed, those
So
are the
that's
headline.
two. And then vaccinations, actually. was
Yeah,
the
I liked it
highlight.
too.
Right, I think it's super exciting.
Yeah.
The picture, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll
Tear
link
up
the
for nothing
picture.
too. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I think those were the big headlines. Did we miss anything?
Do we want to say and we're moving forward to the basic play structure?
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
gosh,
of
let's
course,
let's
of
go to the
course,
fourth one,
yes.
yes, yeah, please.
Let's go.
That's all good things. Okay, governance workshop. We included it on our agenda just to, as a way to acknowledge to our community that we did have a governance workshop last Friday, amazingly, just a few days ago. A half-day workshop, and I think it was very productive. I'm gonna let everyone else speak if they'd like to, but it was, we typically do these when we have a new board member come on board, and we've done these in different ways where we've had facilitators, not facilitators. This time we did not have a facilitator, and I think it worked just fine. We spent the time focusing on our board protocols and our board norms. This is when we decided that we come up with the meeting norms, just acknowledging how our meetings have evolved to having just a handful of people in the room to being, upwards of 250 people sometimes. So creating those meeting norms. Anything else anyone wants to say about other outcomes? Productive session?
Yeah, very productive.
Yeah, I think it was.
Productive, a lot. Yeah, it was good.
And I think one of the takeaways too is that Annie and Raquel are going to be following up and going deeper into governance through the CSBA workshops in the future. So I think we'll hopefully be able to continue discussion around governance using what you all learn as a way to sort of integrate it into our meetings. So great news. All right, reports. And we have our new structure. This was inspired by you. The questions to help give updates. And the two questions are, I'm gonna remember what they are. I'll remember what they are, but I know they're in our pack.
In the purple.
Yes. Just the guiding questions are, what were the topics, what were the main topics covered? And this is related to events, meetings, or committees attended. And what was your biggest takeaway? I can model it, okay. But I'm not gonna take some of these because I think that, okay, so the meetings I attended since our last board meeting was the E2 meeting. This takes place just before David's JLAC meeting, and this is the Efficiency and Effectiveness Committee at the county level. It was last December. Interestingly, they used Larkspur Port Madera as a highlight of describing, they took the full hour to describe kind of their process of how they came to, their whole summer process of getting to in-person learning. It was fascinating, I think, for all of us who participated. And a sobering moment too. I think a lot of us looked at it like, wow. But I do think that one takeaway that I'm just gonna say is that, they covered all the topics they covered were really the kind of like tangible steps is that brought them from an MOU to collaboration with all the different stakeholders. But that I thought was interesting is you could just see the diversity of the way that these programs are being applied in our county, whereas they looked at hybrid as 1 week. They thought that it was like, you know what, we're only doing 1 week of hybrid because that's not where we want to get to. We want to get to in-person learning and not do anything else. And it was interesting just to sort of look around the room of other districts and realize that all of us are doing such different things and at different timetables. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway. The other events is the public health talk on, which I think all of us have attended through Dr. Matt Willis and Dr. Lisa Santoro, and the governor's press conference. They were, I think, tag team within a day of each other, both excellent. The biggest takeaway I would say is that, we're emphasizing that the schools are safer than being out in community for our children. And from a community perspective, it's safer for kids to be in schools. And I also thought it was interesting from the governor's side of, and this was reiterated with his budget, is that they are really putting money behind this message in terms of prioritizing opening schools. So that was, nice to see. And of course, it was great to see. I think Raquel highlighted this, is that our Marin County model is what's being used as the state model right now, the 30-point plan. And so that was nice to see. I'm gonna let, Davina, I'm gonna let you do DLAC, which also took place recently. And I think, Raquel, you already mentioned the College of Marin meeting that just took place as well. So I don't think there's anything to highlight there, except that we did follow up on the safety that came out, the safety focus that I think came out of our last meeting. And that will hopefully be echoed within our Safe Routes to School. The last one is just our safety committee meeting, which was yesterday. And the main topics covered were, the comprehensive safety plan. We talked a lot about the new travel and gathering guidance, which was interesting to hear how that was being implemented on that day. And my main takeaway there is I just think we're lucky we have a group of people with a lot of fresh perspectives. Like, Wendy was looking at the safety comprehensive plan for the first time, and then kind of people who have like very experienced, like an Anna Lynn, who actually, put together the entire safety plan last year, the tag and ticket system, and how lucky we are to have such a rich group of people making these changes. So, sorry, long-winded. That was long-winded for my first report. Who's going up next is Sarah.
Okay. So main topics covered and biggest takeaway. So the things that I've done, negotiations.
Just a small thing.
But we've talked about the takeaway because we have this tentative agreement. So I feel like that, and that was obviously the topic covered. So that pretty much takes care of that one.
Yeah.
And then I admit that it's a blur, but I think the Budget 101 meeting that we did for the Finance Committee was between the last board meeting and this board meeting.
December. It was in December.
We've had so many board meetings, it's a little hard to keep track.
Yes.
And that really Raquel and Kirsten led. I was there as a board representative for the committee, but did a great job just giving an overview of the different sources of funding, the overall sources of revenue and the expenditures. And as we head into another budgeting cycle, I just think it's so important for all of our community and stakeholders to really understand all the constraints and the operations. So I know we have another Budget 101, the second piece of it, but I don't recall the date, Raquel. Is it on our list?
It is. It's not on the list, but it is just around the corner.
I was going to say, I feel like it's February, but.
We know it's at the end of.
Is it the end of this month?
Yeah, I'll find the date right now.
Should have it in my calendar.
20. Oh, no, it's the finance.
21st is finance.
I think, you know what, I don't think we've actually confirmed it because we have finance on the 21st. So, so we have to confirm the date. We knew we were going to do it in January. So
Okay.
To be determined.
All right, so we'll have a second piece of that, and I think that's gonna dig much more into the projections for next year based on all the variables, including potentially a variation in our KIC funding. And really
Yeah.
looking at crafting a budget for next year. Because as also mentioned in the agenda tonight, we're going into negotiations for the contract.
Yeah.
And so that budgeting and that set of negotiations will be part of the spring.
And the Budget 101, the first part is a link on our site as well, so if people missed it, because it was, I think, the last week before going on
Yes.
holiday break. So it
Like
might
the
have been a-
16th or 17th.
Yes, that's what I remember, so.
Yeah, and the FICMAT presentation is on the 21st, so we probably
Yes.
don't want to do our Budget 101 on the 21st, but anyway, that's the MCOE financial presentation on the 21st. Okay, that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Next, Annie.
Yes, so I am part of the equity committee and we met on December 15th, so right before break. A couple takeaways. We have a priority to review all practices and protocols with an equity lens. We shared ideas around recruitment and retainment of educators of color at the district. We discussed how we can increase inclusivity of all and ideas related to a point person to support community engagement. My main takeaways is just continuing for our group to focus on the outcomes that we can present to the board in April, and also how we can include the new MCOE day class at Basage. And that goes along with today, Raquel and I visited that new MCOE class. And it was really wonderful. There were 6 or 7 kids. Kate Mansour is the teacher, and we met the physical therapist also, and it was really nice to visit and see that new class, and hopefully we can start conversations on how we can get them more included with the entire community. Yeah, so that's my update.
That's great. Yeah. Is that class meeting daily? Oh, it
Yeah.
is, that's what I thought, right, since the beginning, okay, that's what I remember, okay.
Yeah, since October, I want to say.
Yeah.
And what is the age range or grade range?
K2 through.
K2.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's 7 kids. She said, I just said decrease in enrollment, but it fluctuates all the time. But Kate Mansour is pretty phenomenal. And she shared that she's been doing some push into some of our enrichment classes.
Right.
So, which is great. So the kids are getting the opportunity for the mainstreaming. They feel completely welcome. So special shout out to the Basage staff and the leadership there with Mary Ann on just really, really including the class. But they are very, very happy to be there. And we've got some of our own Kentfield residents that are in that class.
I was gonna ask that next
Yes,
question, how
yes.
many is, I think
There's 2.
two?
Yes,
Yes,
and
they're
so,
cute, nice.
so yeah, so it was really, really positive. I
Yeah.
thought visiting that class and seeing Kate entertain them was great.
It was a good visit, yeah.
All right, so, David.
So we heard a little bit of negotiations. Clearly, the big takeaway there is progress towards a collaborative MOU to move forward, to revisit hybrid and figure out full in-person. So that was good, and I know the community is looking forward to hearing more about that. My other big responsibility is the JLAC, which is the Sacramento Committee, sort of what's happening at the state level. And there's been a shift in the last few months in terms of a lot of talk about distance learning and how do we implement that, and many districts in Marin having so many challenges with internet connections and devices and all kinds of things. So that was really a focus. People really focused on individual pots of money that related to that accessibility issue. And this most recent meeting really shifted towards sort of dollars for reopening questions. And we had some detailed follow-up after the most recent Newsom thing. And my biggest takeaway is $2 billion does not go very far. It sounds like a lot of money.
I hear that one, I know, not what it used to be.
We hear about money in DC, we hear about money about Sacramento, we hear about this and that, and I think Kentfield needs to remember that there are many formulas in which Kentfield doesn't show the need to the extent that we'll see other things. the demands in San Francisco, Davina, the demands in Oakland, the demands in Sacramento County, I mean, the district, the demands in LA, I mean,
Fresno, yes.
$2 billion goes away pretty quickly. So anything from the state that's additional is great. The current numbers that we're hearing is $450 per head for average daily attendance in the first round, which is the February 1st round, and then $338 per head. So total of almost $800 per head for this year. Fully discretionary, can spend it on anything, but we don't qualify for a lot of the supplements to that, which that are getting some other districts up to, $1,000 and $2,000 a head. I mean, there's a lot of money that we're not having access to. So my one caution about that is when you read these headlines, a lot of it disappears before it trickles to us. But it's all welcome. I think that the JLAC committee is doing a good job. I think that Frost Ball, which is our advocacy group up there, does a good job of keeping us apprised of it. But we just need to look at some of these headlines with a realistic eye.
Yeah. That's great. All right. Thanks, David. And then obviously there's no trips to DC. I mean, DC, Sacramento.
Yeah. And they've been trying to
Sorry.
Neither. Actually, no DC, no Sacramento.
No.
They're trying to put together some virtual stuff.
Oh, they are, okay.
Everyone's been so slammed.
That's
right?
what I'd imagine.
And there was a sentiment of just let them do their work.
Right, exactly. That makes sense. No, I was curious.
So can I just chime in really quick? So, we did, myself and I did ask Kirsten to put together a presentation on the governor's proposal, because this Friday, she and I are both participating in the school services presentation that gives the devil's in the details.
That's right.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And then next week, Sarah, you mentioned the FICMAT presentation that's happening with the executive director of the Fiscal Crisis Management and Assistance Team of the state, Mike Fine and Brooks Allen, who works with the state board, two really competent, high-level folks that I'm excited to hear from. So once we have that information from them, because they really drill down, we'll be sharing further information. So that's why I said I anticipate at the February board meeting, we'll have that information to share at Finance Committee and utilize it in Budget 101 Part 2. So,
Right. Great. All right, Davina, last but not least.
So we had a DLAC meeting. Raquel gave her updates, which is always nice to be able to do with more engagement in a small group. And I would say the best part of the meeting was just some open forum time that where parents could just share how things were going and questions they had. And there was definitely a pattern around like wanting more clarity around expectations, kind of unclear. We touched on some need for more parent education for parents to better understand Seesaw and Google Classroom, relevant for now, but those are going to be systems that we continue to use even after COVID. So just them having, really wanting to understand more if their kids were on track. So I would say that was definitely the highlight, is just being able to have that open dialogue time.
All right, and that's going to be continued, just to Davina, what you mentioned. I think that's going to be the next meeting as well. Further questions related to the LCAP. So it's really kind of diving in. There's like 4 questions or something like that. And we'll go deeper on those same questions, or different ones?
Probably adjust a bit.
Right, okay. Yeah.
The key
Agreed.
is the stakeholder feedback and getting the engagement from all of our different groups. So that's a key word that we want to get information from, for sure.
Great, all right. Okay, let's move into master calendar, which I think Annie noted it's true. It used to be linked. We could probably put that back in. Link, and this is that one, the colorful one that this guy. But maybe it's not meant to be linked.
You know what? I went back last night. I found it.
It is linked.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, that was
The next equity committee isn't on the calendar.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I meant master calendar. Davina, I'm talking about the one that tells us what's sort of coming up on the from a board meeting agenda. But then but you're talking about like the pertinent dates.
Yes.
Yes, got it.
January 19th, it's missing. The equity meeting.
But before we jump in there, why don't we, wait, are there any future agenda items that anyone wants to bring up now?
Just that we put it on the substitute
The
rate.
substitute.
Yes, that has to come back.
We will give an update on where we are with the LCAP advisory group and kind of what the plan will be. And then I mentioned the budget piece, so I think it'll be good to give some information about the proposed state budget. But the Kirsten always reminds me of this, which is really, really true, is that, you know, we get the proposal in January and things could very much change when we get the May revise.
Right.
And as we know, this year,
More than
or
ever.
last fiscal
Yeah.
year, it changed significantly. I mean, I can vividly remember changing
Yes.
presentations right before the meetings that we were attending. So, but for the next meeting, we can give some updates on what we highlights from that.
And then probably, well, this is given the collaborative group.
I'd say the working group
The working
should
group
show
as
up
well,
as
yes,
well.
the working group
For
update,
sure,
yes.
for sure.
Hybrid and the in-person.
I don't know where this is in our trajectory, but it seems like we've seen such great evidence of the English language arts curriculum being so continuous and consistent. And there's been a lot of discussion the last couple of years about which curriculum for math and all that stuff.
Right.
Maybe it's not a great use of time in the next meeting, but maybe the one after that, when we have more visibility towards, you know, going back full in person and maybe some more data points about how that's going. Because we've spent money on it and we've spent time on it.
Right.
I
I'm
feel
just
like
trying to see what math traditionally is.
it would
I mean,
be
this
nice to have an update.
A normal year, math would take place in March.
Okay, that's fine.
So
If
that
we
might
wait till
be
then, that's fine.
that might be the time.
I just want to make sure we don't forget about it.
That's a good point, David.
I mean, just even looking at this, and this is interesting too, February is traditionally tech and innovation. I don't know if that's gonna be ready to do. I mean, this, you can look at this list again.
We
we can look
we
at it.
have that as a source to go back to, but I don't know that we've been following it.
That's what I was gonna say, especially this year, which gives us room to, but I did, note that March was traditionally first and second grades and then math at Kent. So it's just Kent though, it didn't, you're asking for more the trajectory of K.
I mean, I think that's an
A, B,
interesting thing to
C.
understand.
Yeah.
We've made it a bit of a focus to try to stitch the
I agree.
schools together. And
And it was a big effort from, and you know, well, this is like maybe, there isn't a specific basic math educational showcase that's listed on this, so that might be just, we should look at this whole thing over again, but I feel like it's probably,
I think
well
the key was
done.
just being sure we had a showcase at, when we talked about it,
Yeah.
we just be sure we had a showcase at each meeting.
Right.
And then, you know, we can make that a little more systematic as we think about next
Right.
year's
right.
board meetings, you know. That's what I would suggest. Just-
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like I said, this has been, at least since I've been here, it hasn't changed in 7 years, so it might be time to just do a refresh, right?
would it be useful to put the stakeholder LCAP stakeholder meetings on here maybe?
We should. We've been adding stuff to these because initially it was just like holidays, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then like meetings like DLAC and were asked to be put on there. And now, am I hearing that we want all the board committee meetings to be on this as well?
They're starting to sneak in there, finances there.
Yeah, finance is there, I was gonna say that, yeah.
Probably a good idea.
And then for sure the LCAP strategic plan. and
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because we have those dates and they're open as well.
Great. All right, down to the end. Debrief on meetings and norms. David, you read the governance team norms. Any comments?
So I think that went well. Now with the clock not being here, we're on time, so that's good.
Can you please let him know that?
I will.
We should all text him when we get home.
We're not on time, we're like.
Ahead,
Really?
just say it from.
Oh, but we're not done.
So a number of things I think went very well. Clearly, the educational showcase was
Yes,
great.
yeah.
I think we did a good job conveying the update for people. It was sort of a tricky between meeting because
Yeah.
we had a week of distance and then we just had a couple of days with that. But I think the updates were very useful. I'm going to keep harping on this consistency of curriculum thing because I think it's great.
Yeah.
I thought that was a glow.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we could have done a little bit better is be more ready to disclose to our community why we weren't able to share as much details that they were looking for about the tentative agreement, right? The reason is because it just got ratified and we couldn't really talk about it until it had, right? But I just think if we convey that to people, it helps enhance transparency and confidence in what we're doing. Because we heard it in some of the questions, like, what are the details? So, I think I was just a victim of the timing of what was when.
Yeah, it literally got ratified today, right, this
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah,
by
so I think
KTA,
if we're just
yes.
more proactive about
Right.
the restrictions on our communications and details, I think that'll help us.
Yeah. Great. Any other glows and grows? Davina, anything over there? No? How was the sound coming in from, it was
Fine.
good. It wasn't like being in an airport, like I was complaining about in the district office. Okay, that's good. This, great. Well, I think, as I can officially do it, at 8:08.
The record.
We're officially adjourning. Thanks to all who made it through to the end. It looks like there's still 27 people that are still there. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.